Everyone, it's 9 o'clock, and I'd like to call to order the Eastern Kentucky University Board of Regents meeting of June 30th, 2020. At this time, I'd like to ask council to confirm that we do in fact have a quorum.
Good morning, everybody. If you don't mind, I will go ahead and read the roll, just since we are in an unconventional setting. Laura Babbage. Juan Castro.
Here.
Nancy Collins. Philip Gump.
Here.
Madison Lipscomb.
Here.
Alan Long.
Here.
Jason Marion.
Here.
Lynn Ty.
Here.
Vasu Vasudevan. And Chairman
Here.
Yes. Chairman, I can confirm we do have.
Thank you. At this time, let me ask President McFadden to jump in and sort of give us kind of a little operating summary of how to make this work efficiently for the morning. This is our first Zoom meeting. It's my first Zoom meeting in terms of moderating a meeting. So in terms of housekeeping and how to run this as efficiently as possible, I'd like to hand it over to David to give us some instruction.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much. I might ask Ryan Wilson if he would. Regent Babbage is having a little bit of challenge getting in, so if he'll send her the link again offline while I give some orders here. I think council can call the roll again once she joins the group. Well, good morning. Great to have everyone with us in this virtual setting. We are set up this morning in a way where every board member and every presenter who is scheduled on the agenda for today is in the live Zoom meeting. Those out there, there's a link to our YouTube channel for those who want to simply view the meeting this morning, and we will make sure that that link is up and live the entire time. Council's office has researched and worked with CPE and with some of the relaxed statutes and the Attorney General's office to make sure that we will be in full compliance this morning for having an open meeting in a virtual setting. And as if we have any technical difficulties or anything that happens throughout the day, we may pause, see if we can rectify the issue. Otherwise, we would have to call the roll again to ensure we have a quorum and be able to move forward if we have individuals who have technical issues or have to drop out. I'm not sure, Mr. Chairman, what the scheduled break schedule will be, but if we have those recess sessions, obviously, please make sure that you use the tools in Zoom for video and for audio muting. That's always good. That's always good practice in this space. I want to thank Danny Lewis, who is our e-presence administrator, Dr. Ryan Wilson. The two of them have put this together. I think they've done test sessions with everyone. All of us have become very proficient with Zoom over the last several months, but we will do our level best today to make this as smooth as possible for everyone involved. The chairman is here with us, so we do have kind of some backup contingencies in case we were to have any kind of technical issues on this end. So I would just ask that we all be patient. Please be mindful of managing your mute buttons. If something comes up and you need to leave, please notify the chair or the secretary, if that's either by text message or by chat function or by using any kind of reaction tool here in Zoom. If you have chat questions or things that want to be logged, the entire meeting is being recorded. So we will be able to respond directly to those chat questions if that is a better way for you to be able to communicate questions or concerns you may have as it relates to moving through the agenda for the day. We're excited to be together. I do think that this will be an expedient way to do our business today, and look forward to some robust discussion about some very important issues. So, Mr. Chair, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. You all will see, and I'm sure you've reviewed our agenda. We bypassed all committee meetings for the sake of expediency and for the sake of efficiency in this meeting. And so what we've done is we've combined everything into one agenda, one set of action items. And then in the first set of items, we have all of our informational items. So first, we're going to start off with the university reports, and foremost in all of our minds is how the university is reacting to the COVID-19 and what we're doing to proactively manage our ability to move the institution forward. And in that, I'm so grateful that we have Brian Mackinnon, Dr. Mackinnon on our team. And I would like to hand the floor over to him to provide a summary from public safety and risk management.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. Good morning, Regents, President McFadden, and distinguished guests. It's certainly my honor and pleasure to serve the university, as well as to be the spokesperson on behalf of the 3 COVID-19 groups, which are comprised of 70 dedicated professionals on our campus. This is the COVID-19 Task Force, the Fall Contingency Planning Task Force, and the Athletics Task Force. Certainly, I'm humbled and impressed by the caliber of individuals we have navigating this pandemic and who are serving to prepare our community to provide world-class instruction. I assure each of you that each decision that has been made has been vetted and run through the President's Council for review and consideration. And certainly it has been amazing to witness the 3 task forces and the President's Council navigate the sheer volume of information and see the making of decisions that effectively balances risk. In introducing the 3 task forces, I would certainly be remiss if I did not highlight each of these teams to include the President's Council and showcase that they have been working many, many long days and long weeks in order to respond to this crisis and ensure that our campus community is well positioned to effectively operate, both now in summer sessions and in the coming fall term. Each individual certainly deserves our highest respect because certainly they have earned mine for steadfast dedication and, if nothing else, the sheer raw grit that they bring to the table each and every single day, upwards of 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. It's not uncommon for, again, each of these individuals on these teams very long days. What I will do, I'm going to lay out kind of the flow of the presentation. I'll begin by describing the composition of the 3 teams, the overall philosophy for decisions being made, and then I'll discuss some high-level decision points. And certainly if you have questions, we can drill down as much as you want, or certainly we can talk offline if there's individual questions. We'll be happy to answer any and all of them. Please know that the kernel comeback plan that was presented to you prior to this meeting, it is in a perpetual state of change. It was current as of last Friday, and I assure you pieces of that plan are already beginning to change and unfold as we continually respond to this environment of which we find ourselves. So what I will do is I will refer everyone to our COVID-19 dedicated website, and that's staywell.eku.edu. And you can link, there's links available on the homepage or Eastern's homepage, and certainly encourage you to go to that. I'm not sure if you can see the slide presentation. It was right in your board materials if it's not going to be presented on the screen. But to start walking through, if you go with me to slide 1, the new COVID task force, the COVID-19 task force was the first group that was formed with in charge with navigating the insurmountable amount of information, which has now been coined an infodemic. And this is basically an emergency that is created in and of itself by the volume of information available, both true and false. And this task force had to navigate that information and come up with meaningful takeaway points from each. This task force has 35 dedicated professionals who have strengths in public health, environmental health, occupational safety, healthcare, biological science, operations management, and many other related disciplines that help our university navigate this crisis. This task force currently has 5 subcommittees, and we keep adding to that weekly, which are working on tasks such as university testing strategies and the procurement and distribution of needed personal protective equipment. They have recommended standards for campus operations and building safeguard strategy for our campus community.
Dr. Mackinnon, I might ask that you share screen there and just kind of walk this group through that if you don't mind.
Absolutely, it'd be my pleasure. Let me pop that up real quick.
And just a reminder for everyone who's presenting today, you're driving your own presentation, so you'll be sharing screen and driving for yourself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My apologies for that. Let me go ahead. Can you see the Presentation in front of you now? All right, thank you, Phil. I can see you nodding. My apologies, the window went down about 4 people. So here is our very first committee, and this is the composition of that group. Again, this has been provided in your board materials, and I encourage you to look through and see the caliber of individuals that are available to us on this committee, or on task force rather. The second task force is the Fall Contingency Planning Task Force. And this task force is comprised of 22 high caliber individuals and is broken down into 2 primary functions, the instructional piece and the support services piece. And we'll talk more about that in just a moment. This task force is co-chaired by Dr. Sarah Ziegler and Miss Elizabeth Ballou. And I assure you, I do not think either one of these individuals sleeps at all. They are going at all hours of the day and night preparing our campus for this fall semester. They likewise have subcommittees working on tasks such as the academic calendar, classroom designations, house plans, and other student success and academically focused needs on campus. The third and last task force that we have is the athletics task force. This is comprised of 13 athletic professionals who have developed strategies specific to our athletes and their success both on the competition field and in the classroom setting. Similar to the other 2 task forces, they have dedicated many, many long hours to planning students to return to campus and acclimating them to our new environment. As for guiding principles, every decision that is being made at each level of this process that is made by all 3 task forces and will continue to be the guiding principles moving forward is first and foremost the safety of our employees and students. This is our primary consideration, and this informs all decisions that are being made, both within the task force and at the President's Council level. Protecting our most vulnerable populations is one of our essential criteria, and again, informs and drives our decisions. And then secondly, providing the most robust and engaging educational experience possible remains one of our focal points. Certainly the safety of our community is absolutely paramount and will not be compromised. Implementing the various aspects of a kernel comeback plan, as you will see, will require that each member of our campus community actively participates in the process and is also a generator of innovative ideas and can work differently today than we did this time last year. This is required of all members of our community, but I'm certainly convinced that we will showcase to the world what it means to be an Eastern caring kernel. Now, so we're going to get into a little bit of the highlights of what each task force has done at this point in time. I certainly cannot cover everything as we have been working diligently since spring break of last semester, working on all of these plans and all of these processes. There's a lot of information that went into inform each one of the takeaways and decisions that was made. So again, if you have specific questions, I'll be happy to dive deeper into each one of these, but I intend to stay at a 30,000 foot view level for the sake of expediency of today. So for the general operations, this is the COVID-19 task force, the original task force that was developed, who operationalized several important components of the backbone of our kernel's comeback strategies. These are going to include topics such as considerations for space utilization and campus operations. For instance, facilities management personnel are actively installing signage within buildings that are in line with the governor's recommendations and the new university guidelines for signage relative specifically to COVID. A team that is comprised of conferencing and events, facilities management, environmental health and safety has gone around and assessed 100% of our classrooms on campus, as well as other spaces that are unconventional that may traditionally be used for the classroom environment. And they've developed safe maximum capacities and layouts for these classroom environments to keep in mind social distancing. Going back to the key premise of the primary principle or primary guidepost of the decisions are made are keeping our employees and our students safe. So while guidance may be coming out that is specific to face coverings and social distancing, we're going to take all of the information, all the plans that are available at the governor's and the state level and the federal level, and we're going to combine these together and come up with the safest possible strategy that we can while still continuing to operate in the campus community. Our university procurement department has done an absolutely outstanding job. It has worked tirelessly to source personal protective equipment and safety related items at very cost-effective price points. This is absolutely amazing considering we are competing with the rest of the nation and the world for the exact same things, which are in very short order. Hats truly off to them. Cleaning products, the standards have been established and we're working with third-party vendors to make sure that our spaces are cleaned according to standard. And the primary third-party vendor we have on campus is Airmark. And likewise with dining protocols are being established with our dining vendor to ensure that their operations are safe and consistent with similar operations at other higher ed institutions throughout the nation. That is one of the benefits behind having third-party vendors is we get to utilize their national experience with other higher ed institutions and build from that here on our campus. Certainly, we've been managing vast amounts of COVID-19 information, which continue to pile in daily. And our testing subcommittee has absolutely done an outstanding job coming up with a testing methodology for our campus community. And with the support of President McFadden and the President's Council, we now have the ability, or will rather soon have the ability, to have instant on-site COVID-19 testing for our student population through our Student Health Services Department. And certainly we are grateful for that. And then healthy at work procedures have been developed, as well as employee training protocols developed. The university COVID-19 Colonel's Comeback Plan and other departmental plans have been developed and approved to begin our university operations. These include areas as basic plans for Model Lab School, COVID-19 plan development management, both at the university and departmental level. We have implemented a team that does process all reports of COVID-19 related activities, and we have deemed to be reportable events at the university. And this team does work around the clock to ensure that our response efforts are meaningful. And then lastly, dedicated professionals that liaise with local public health officials, healthcare officials, government officials, and emergency response stakeholders to ensure that there is a seamless response and timely processing of information that may impact our campus community. Certainly navigating these uncharted waters, it requires all of us to be innovative, to have flexibility, and to bring out teamwork. The Fall Contingency Task Force has been working to navigate our academic offerings and our student experiences that are going to be expected on campus. Many decisions that were made require that we rethink how we operate. Some of the many achievements that they've had include, first and foremost, working with faculty and staff for schedule flexibility. And this is within the parameters of local, state, and federal regulations to continue, so that the university continue to operate and allow for staggering of on-campus personnel, again, to limit the number of physical individuals we have on campus. Multiple strategies have also been developed that meet the needs of all students. Not everyone learns in the same manner, and certainly not everyone learns best in an online environment, but the converse to that is also true. So the faculty have been working hard at instructional delivery methodologies, for example, well-structured e-campus courses have been opened up so that non-EKU or non-e-campus faculty can benefit from these course shells, which were designed and developed specifically for that online learner. And that is important, along with several other strategies they've implemented. We have implemented professional development, consultations, and workshops. This is certainly impressive to see how our individual faculty members are embracing this opportunity of this new environment to develop their instructional methodologies. It's certainly a way of being better tomorrow than we are today, and we're doing this collectively. And then in working with faculty, this team in particular explored and implemented class delivery methodologies. The four primary class delivery methodologies that they came up with is first, staggered delivery. This is where students may attend alternate days. So for instance, if they have a Tuesday-Thursday schedule, half the class may come on Tuesday, the other half learns in a non-traditional methodology. and then flip that on Thursday where the other half of the class physically comes, and then the original half goes to that non-traditional or maybe an online offering. There are web blended classes that have been developed. There are classes that have gone fully online, and then offering classes in the traditional format, but with smaller class sizes in larger spaces, so we can respect that social distancing that's available. Just as a progress update, right now, about 28% of the class sections that are going to offer were converted from on-campus to online. And we expect to have all schedule adjustments, and this is aside from our normal additions and routine changes, to be completed by mid-July. Some key support considerations, initiatives that they have include academic resources for student success. This is both modules available to integrate into courses. And then there's also additional pedagogical resources for faculty that are being provided by the Noel Studio for Academic Creativity and the Instructional Design Center, the IDC. This team did recommend a revised calendar that has most students leaving campus at Thanksgiving and then the finals week occurring the week after. And this is going to allow for several things, to include a full winter term, and also gives the faculty and staff the opportunity to catch up or get prepared for the workload of the spring semester. But public health sources are indicating that there will most likely be a second wave of COVID-19, and the concern is that it's going to follow our traditional flu season. So having students, for the most part, being away from campus after Thanksgiving is going to be important in helping keep this disease at bay, under control. And certainly an extremely large lift by this committee included a section-by-section class planning and space allocation process. The spreadsheet that was churned from this was absolutely mind-boggling, but was essential in ensuring that on-campus classes can be offered a systematic and a meaningful way. And to note as a progress point, we are now, that committee and the university is 84% complete on registrar changes and about 65% complete on space allocation. For athletics, which is our last task force, our athletics task force has been meeting regularly and will continue to develop their return to athletics activity plan. And this is consistent with federal, state, local, university, NCAA, and OC orders, policies, and guidance. There's a lot to take in with athletics, and there's a great number of opinions exist, and we are looking at the direction that is being given and seeing what the best practices will be for the upcoming fall semester. Our student athletics began returning to campus in phases, and that began on June 8th, and it will continue through July. And certainly I want to mention that athletics, sports medicine, and sports medicine staff have been at the forefront of our student athletes' safe and responsible return to campus and reacclimation to campus. They certainly are true partners in safeguarding our student athletes and their matriculation back to the campus environment. A special note and interest will be our housing operations. And this is something that all institutions that house campus on students, whether they are colleges or universities, are navigating right now in this new environment. To note, our housing team, they have developed a plan, and this plan does emphasize safety and our ability to meet student housing needs. The student housing operation is going to offer suite style halls, which will operate in a traditional capacity, but a very limited capacity. Not a limited capacity for suite style. They will have select traditional halls that will operate with double occupancy, and that will be select capacities. These halls are selected due to their size, elevator status, location, and ability for students to social distance in common areas such as hallways and bathrooms. And then other traditional halls will continue to operate, but in single occupancy mode. City measures that housing has implemented, again, keeping it at 30,000 foot view level. There's certainly more operational decisions that have been made, but they are going to have a reduced overall housing capacity. They have implemented safety recommendations such as the installation of plexiglass at the front desk for that point of sale or that touch point, as well as visitor procedure development, touchless student check-in, and many other programs. They have implemented the Colonel's Care program, which is centered on a student commitment to follow and embody necessary safety recommendations in the residence halls. And this is truly a plan that is colonels looking out for their fellow colonel in their living environment. And then they also have implemented increased cleaning regimens and will continue to enhance this process as classes reopen. Again, of special will be Model Laboratory School and Career Child Development Center. So far, there are specific plans that are being developed for both these operations under the guidance and care of Dr. Dana Bush and John Williamson. Their team has been working feverishly to prepare their spaces for welcoming kids and young adults in the fall. Both areas will be implementing procedures based on guidance from the governor's office and the Kentucky Department of Education, which is the true driver behind the policies and procedures. And then each plan will be reviewed by the Madison County Health Department. They very recently, the governor's office and the KDE very recently released a document entitled Guidance on Safety Expectations and Best Practices for Kentucky Schools on June 20, and this happened on June 24th. We expect that there will be multiple explanatory documents that will be coming out soon, and we will work through each and every one of these to ensure that the safety elements within each plan are carried out in both of these environments. And just to note, in partnership with the Madison County Health Department, Model Lab has already developed and implemented 3 plans, and these include them holding the first ever outdoor drive-through graduation ceremony, which went off with resounding success. They did hold an elementary year-end celebration parade, and they also developed strategies for a safe summer school education for those students in need. And then last, but certainly not least, we have some upcoming initiatives. There will be a COVID-19 town hall meeting that is going to be co-hosted and sponsored by both Faculty Senate and Staff Council, which is scheduled for 2 o'clock on July 13th. This is going to be mainly for employees of the university, and details are being actively finalized at this time. So with all of this, I've covered a lot of material. I again want to thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the 70 individuals who have certainly given countless hours to navigating this pandemic, and to the President's Council for their unwavering dedication to placing safety as a primary consideration in absolutely every decision that is being made. And I'll open it up at this time for questions that you may have.
Are there any questions for Dr. Makinen? Dr. Makinen, I want to thank you for all the work that you and the team have put together in putting our campus in a position to keep students safe and to return to normal operations as best we can. Please express the board's gratitude to the members of the task force as they move forward. Undoubtedly, there will be more challenges, and we thank you in advance for all the care, attention, and diligence that you all will be putting to that.
Absolutely, my pleasure. Thank you.
Sure. Before we move on to the next presenter, I do want to acknowledge for the Madam Counselor for the minutes that Regent Collins and Regent Babbage have joined the Zoom call.
Yes, sir, we got it.
Excellent. Next on the agenda is Dr. Tanley Wasson, who is going to talk to us about student success and enrollment in an ever-changing landscape. Is your technology not cooperating, Dr. Wasson?
It is not. For some reason, it won't let me share. I'll try again. Give me just.
If that is the worst that happens today, we're going to be in pretty good shape.
working now? Everybody's, okay. All right, well, thank you. I do want to give you an update on where we stand with enrollment for fall 2020 and give you a little bit of a preview for where we will be for fall 2021. I first want to talk to you a little bit about the challenges we face with the current fall 2020 recruitment process. You know about many of these. I'll start with the late application launch. As you know, I discussed at our last meeting the slate implementation. It was delayed, and because of that delay, we were about 2 months late in launching the application for fall 2020, which really squeezed the recruitment period, specifically for some populations in some areas. We also had significant turnover once the previous vice president and the executive director for enrollment management announced their leaving. We had turnover in 12 positions within enrollment management. That's pretty typical with leadership turn, but all of those positions were directly tied to recruitment and enrollment, and so they did impact our ability to be as effective as we wanted to be during the recruitment cycle. We've also done a complete communication rebuild. We conducted an audit of communications to new students and continuing students, really the lifetime of the student, and found that there were key areas of communication that were being missed in the recruitment pipeline. And we've worked hard to change those in a significant way. The communication and brand management folks have been critical in informing that process, and we think we have a solid base both right now for the fall 20 ongoing recruitment activities, but really going into fall 21, this new plan has really helped us focus on what we need to do to recruit students in terms of communication. And then last but not least, COVID-19. We understand that there are things that have happened with COVID-19 that are going to directly impact enrollment. Job loss within our region is going to affect affordability. We know that there's delayed decision-making on students' part because of fears of the pandemic and not knowing what's going to happen in the fall in terms of whether classes will be online or face-to-face. I hope that getting the kernel comeback plan out there will help with some of that uncertainty, and I look forward to seeing that being out to our students. We've also had a loss of in-person events. We've done, I think our team has done a tremendous job in shifting to virtual events, but in-person events have been key to reducing melt. And so things like campus visits and orientation, having those in person, not being able to have those in person, I think has been difficult. And we're not sure really how that will impact us exactly going forward. So to respond to all of that, we've had to work a puzzle. And so we've put together a lot of pieces that we think will help us mitigate some of those challenges that I just presented to you. Things like test optional admissions. This is a direction we were considering prior to COVID-19, but COVID-19 price challenges for students having access to standardized tests. And so we recognize the need to develop a test optional pathway. And we put that into play for fall 20, and we are planning to extend that to fall 21 as well. We eliminated all application fees for on campus, online. All students, graduate, undergraduate, can apply for free. We've also moved to unofficial admission documents. One of the things that we found is that students are having trouble getting transcripts. And so we're accepting screenshots of transcripts. We're accepting whatever unofficial documents we can to smooth the way. We've also expanded the SMART rate. So we used to have SMART rate for about 17 states, and we have now expanded that to really an out-of-state tuition rate so that all students, out-of-state students, are getting this reduced rate to make it more affordable. We've added scholarship programs. We put over $1 million into need-based aid, much of that for online students. We've never had financial aid, institutional aid for eCampus students, and so this is the first time we've had that option. We've greatly modified advising and registration, both for continuing students and new students. We've turned those virtual, and we've had good responses to those. We're also doing several pilot programs with KCTCS to try and increase that transfer population. So these are just some of the things that we've done to try to adjust to the challenges we face to make sure we are doing the best we can to give as many students the opportunity to be here in the fall as possible. So next, enrollment predictions. In April and May, there were lots of sources inside higher ed, Campus Technology, Forbes, who were reporting that the higher education enrollment would be down as much as 20% in the fall. Those conclusions were based primarily on some survey data they did with high school seniors and current college students. And about 20% of high school seniors indicated that they were reconsidering whether to attend a four-year institution. And another 20% said that if colleges were all online, they would also reconsider. And about 60% of those students said that they would probably take a gap year if that happened. And so, and historically, only about 3% of students take a gap year. So there are lots of churn happening in what students were saying. Much of that has shifted a little bit in the last few months as we've gotten more sound numbers in terms of students attending orientation, students doing deposits, accepting financial aid. Really the numbers continue to shift and we continue to react to the changing indicators. Locally, UK recently predicted a 1,250 student decrease in the freshman population. That's about a 22% decline from the prior year. At EKU, our enrollment prediction model is predicting about an overall 7% decline. We are looking at multiple indicators for freshmen, and right now that freshman number is down, but not nearly as much as what others are predicting in the area. Enrollment prediction is usually based on historical information and economic predictors, and in the current environment, those just are not reliable. And so it's hard for people who are used to using numbers to guide decisions to say that our numbers are unreliable, but right now they just are, and that's an uncomfortable place to be, but we're using what we have to guide our decisions. So we're not just waiting to see. Like I said, when I showed you that puzzle slide, we're responding in every way we can. We've shifted even this week in terms of how we are viewing our financial aid model and the numbers that we currently have. So if you want to, I want to shift to what our numbers are saying about enrollment right now. If we look at overall enrollment and we remove students who've been pre-registered, I'll talk to you a little bit more about that pre-registration process in a moment. Overall enrollment is down about 700 students, about 6.4%. We are up in our eCampus enrollment, so 4% in terms of headcount and over 20% in terms of hours. So not only do they have more students, but those students are taking more hours right now. The places where we have concerns are in continuing students. We're down about 420 students, and I'll show you in a few moments our retention information, and I don't want you to think that there's a disconnect between the two. Having a decrease in the continuing population really is showing that our overall student body is shrinking. It doesn't mean that students who were here last year who are eligible to return are not returning. Our retention rates are going up across the board and within every subpopulation that we track. So I'll talk about that in a few minutes. But our continuing population is down because the entering class and has been smaller and the graduating class has been larger for the last several years. We're also currently down just a little bit in transfer students. And like I said, we're launching some key initiatives to try and increase those transfer student numbers. Our largest enrollment decreases right now are in the College of Health Sciences. We are down in both over 200 students in undergraduate and 150 students in graduate in the College of Health Sciences. The Colleges of Business and Technology and the College of Letters and Arts and Social Sciences are also down just about 100 students, but those are the next highest decreases. So I want to show you some numbers related to orientation. So since EKU doesn't have a deposit per se, we rely on orientation numbers to try and help us predict where we're going to land. And so at this point, we've had nearly 2,700 students register for orientation for fall 2020. And that's an increase of 5.5% over last year. So at this time, or overall last year, we had 5% fewer students who signed up for orientation. You can see in this, the graph to the left, you can see the shift in student behavior. If you see that big gap between the red line and the purple line, when you get around June 30th, this shows that in past years, students signed up for early orientation and there were much fewer students signed up for the later dates. And you see that shifted this year. You have a lot more students who are signed up for later orientation dates. In fact, one of our late July orientations has 275 students signed up for register for orientation. So students are changing their behaviors in terms of participating in orientation, and which is a reflection on their delayed decision making in terms of attending. We are advising and registering students prior to orientation. We've done this as a pilot in the past. We did a small group in the spring where we pre-registered new students. And this year we are pre-registering every new student. So before a student's orientation date, they've already had a discussion with an advisor and they already have a schedule created. We did a pre-registration survey where we asked students what their interests were. Our advisors built schedules based on those interests and have had follow-up conversations with those students. That pre-registration influenced those earlier orientation numbers. I don't know if you remember, I said we took out the students who pre-registered for future orientations, and that's because we've never done this before, and so those enrollments are skewing the data a little bit when you look at year-to-year comparisons of where we were. This has been a pretty successful process. We will change the technology support and try and make it easier for our advisors in the future, but it is something that we will likely continue. One of the biggest benefits of pre-registration is that it shifts our ability to have meaningful conversations with students at orientation about their plans and their careers versus just trying to find classes for them. And so we think it's an important shift in our process, and we're going to continue it going forward. The next slide are those retention data that I mentioned earlier. As I said before, our overall retention, fall to fall retention, is up 4.3%. So our overall, all students. And then when you look at the first time freshmen, and that's the number that you see everywhere. So that's the number that IPEDS reports. It's the number that's on all the CPE reports that you'll see. That first time freshman retention fall to fall is 77.3%. And that's up 3.3% from last year. We're also up significantly for our underrepresented minority students. That retention rate at this point is 10% higher than in prior years. Also for our low income students, that retention rate is up 4.3%. And the students who come in with college readiness challenges, that number is up 20% from the prior year. So we're doing all the things that we need to do to try and keep students here. And those efforts have shown themselves to be successful, not just with freshmen, but also with sophomore persistence. So our sophomores, our 2018 freshmen, are back at a rate higher than in all previous years as well. So that sophomore persistence rate is higher than we've seen it. So what's next? We are not done with fall 20. We still have 7 additional admissions events in July and August. We've hosted over 60 events through the end of June. And so we have done a lot of virtual events, and we have 7 more to go. And those are all day orientation sessions. We have not reduced the number of orientation sessions just because we switched to virtual. We are doing the same number. We've just seen differences in how students are registering them. We are reopening the Welcome Center in July to on-campus tours. the tours will be smaller. Brian's team has worked with us to figure out how to do those tours safely, and we will be doing those again starting in July. Student affairs and student success units, we're reimagining how we do welcome events. We're going to be shifting some of those key traditions to part virtual, part in-person events. We're going to try to add supports for students who are moving in early, because move-in has been extended to not just one day, but to a week. So we'll have students here earlier than ever. We need to have some events for them. So those two units are working together to figure out how we can support students both virtually and in person once move-in happens. Our orientation events are no longer standalone events. Like I told you before, we're pre-registering, so we're communicating with students before. We're doing a pre-orientation check-in, so we give students an opportunity to talk to the counselors and other student success folks before orientation happens. Then they have their orientation, and then after orientation, they have scheduled events with the admissions counselors and with the student representatives who attend their orientation session. So we have scheduled follow-up events in a way that we haven't before. So it's really wrapping around the student prior to and after orientation. Our retention and graduation staff continue to do recruit back campaigns for students who are eligible to enroll and who haven't. Our colleges are working with the student success folks to do that, and we continue to see movement in that area. We've also increased our retention grants to help students who are facing financial barriers. We're leveraging scholarship pools in a way that we haven't before. And so we're looking forward to seeing how we can increase those retention numbers even more. And then lastly, I'll give you a little preview of what we're doing for fall 21 that's a little bit different. We've redistributed recruitment territories so that they make more sense in terms of who's being recruited from the areas. We have a dedicated diversity recruitment within admissions. And we've always had a recruiter, a diversity recruiter, but that person has also had a dedicated territory. And rather than assigning those diversity recruiters to a territory, we're now going to utilize them in ways to address specific populations in a multitude of territories. So we're going to be more intentional about how we approach diversity recruitment. We're also going to leverage dual credit in a way that we haven't before. Our counselors are going to visit and present to the dual credit classes that are offered in the fall in the high schools or virtually, depending on how this all shakes out. We are considering, we're hosting a dual credit live chat for sophomores and juniors to recruit students into dual credit. And we're also going to have live chat and virtual events just for students who participate in EKU dual credit. So we're really rethinking how we're going to leverage dual credit. We're going to continue to look at the impact of the extension of the SMART rate and what we might revise there. We will be doing visit days and open house events for every college, and the colleges are working with us on those. And finally, we're redesigning most of our publications and our communications, including the website, and communication brand management has been essential in reworking those things to better reach our populations. The last thing I'm going to do is give you guys an update on CARES. The CARES funds were distributed to EKU and about $5.2 million. We took the approach that we wanted to get that money as quickly as possible into the hands of students who we thought had the most need. And so we identified 7 high need populations, and those are what are on your screen. And so we identified those populations, set a target amount of a dollar amount that all students in those populations would receive. And then we contacted them to let them know that they just needed to turn in a short information form to be eligible to receive those funds. We also have an application process. Bettina will talk to you later about the SAFE fund, but we established that fund prior to CARES, but we used that process because it was such a great process. We used it to allow students who weren't in any of these 7 populations who've been impacted to apply, or to allow faculty and staff who interacted with students who they know have a need to recommend students through that process. So we do have a way that students who aren't in those populations can still apply and get those funds. To date, we've distributed $4.7 million of the CARES funds to 4,500 students. We have about $516,000 left to distribute through the SAFE application process. And I will take any questions you have about either the enrollment or the CARES process.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, sir. Please proceed.
if I could just add one thing. In the December 2019 minutes, we were advised that 75.11% was the highest freshman retention rates that we had ever had. And I believe that we've got 75.9% is what you reported today for our, first time freshman retention rates, which I think it's, for me looking at this is admirable to have those kinds of retention rates with a year that had several months affected by a pandemic. And I just want to congratulate your staff, the student life staff that are involved in the retention efforts, and then our faculty who have, we as a board and we as a group that's here today, we're just an inkling of all of that. That's kind of that behind the scenes. And I think that everybody deserves a pat on the back for having what appears to me to be the highest freshman retention rates in our history. And then I'm looking at the URM numbers, and it was 64.1% at our December 2019 meeting. And now we're looking at 70.9%, which means whatever it is that we're doing as an institution, even in the midst of a pandemic, on those who do find their way to Eastern, they get met with compassion and love and care and that personal interaction that I don't know if a lot of institutions can provide due to the sheer volume of students that they see and that disproportional faculty to student ratio. So I just want to commend everyone that's been involved in retention, teaching, and learning, because that's incredible to me. I mean, we're worried about enrollment coming in, but the fact that those students who persisted are sticking with us, that must mean that despite all of our challenges, those personal interactions that must have happened online or whatever were meaningful. And, congratulations to those students too, who put in the work and are able to return knowing that their academic standing looks good too. So hats off to all y'all.
Thank you, Dr. Marion. Dr. Wasson, when do those numbers become final or become authenticated for CPE?
They become official after the October 15th enrollment freeze. So they're not official. These are not official numbers, but they are significantly increased from this same point last year, which I think is what I tried to show in that slide. So you can see that although not official numbers, we're still ahead of where we were this time last year, which I think is still a pretty big win for us. So thank you.
That is outstanding. Thank you. I have about 9:55. Mr. President, do you object to us taking a 5-minute break prior to you commencing your presentation?
I do not, Mr. Chair. I would offer a couple of comments about Dr. Wasson's presentation. Let me start with it, if I may. Dr. Wasson has done amazing work in stepping into this role in January. She really kind of went in to relieve pitch here and close out this year. Over half of the recruitment season was over when she stepped in January. And the partnership, as Dr. Marion highlighted, between student success, academic affairs, our K-12 programs could not be better. And as I see Dr. Wasson and Dr. Pogachnik working together, our faculty are the driving force behind that retention and that student success. That is amazing work. As it relates to her team, they are working harder and smarter to make sure that we are not missing any opportunity. And so what traditionally would have been a transition period this week to shifting to recruiting for 2021, we're not letting up on recruiting for 2020. In fact, Dr. Watson told me yesterday that the recruitment cycle for 2020 does not end until the add drop period stops this year. So we will be recruiting students all the way up through that period, and we will have those 8-week eCampus recruitment cycles as well. I will say then, in adapting to this new normal and reimagining what we do, while it is disappointing to see that we will likely be down again this year, redefining that success in the environment that we are in is important. And I want her team and I want this board to know how proud we are as an administrative cabinet of the work that they're doing. We are supporting them every day, and the work that they are doing is so critical to the success of the institution, because with every year that we bring in a group of students, it has to work its way through the institution. And so that continuing student number that Dr. Watson talked about are not students that we're missing, that have disappeared, that were here and are gone. They were students who never showed up because we have been in a cycle here of smaller classes year over year since 2016. We are encouraged about where we're going. We have some amazing programs coming to the forefront this year, both eCampus and traditional courses. We feel like that we are on a trajectory to truly see success in a way that we all want to see it. And I look forward to this time next year being able to look at some gains, significant gains in several places as it relates to our student enrollment, which will continue to alleviate some of the financial pressures for the institution. So Dr. Watson, thank you and your team, and thank you, Mr. Chair, for the point of privilege.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. President. And Dr. Wasson, absolutely, the board echoes everything that President McFadden just said. I often call you our Moneyball person because we have to win with less, and you are certainly doing that. And I'm just very proud of you. Thank you. With that, let's take a quick 5-minute break. If you don't mind to mute your line. Well, most of you are already muted. If you want to stop video, go ahead and stop video. And then we'll come back promptly in 5 minutes.
Mr. Chair,
yes, sir.
do you think you want to do an official recess, a motion for recess?
A motion for recess.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Back in 5 minutes. Mr. President, good morning.
Good morning.
Are you prepared to resume with item 3 on the university reports?
I am, Mr. Chair. Do we need to take any official action to enter back into business?
Madam Counselor?
Mr. Chairman, you can call us back to order, presuming all the regents are back.
I'll give it another couple of another minute or so to give Regent Ty and Regent Long a chance.
I'm
to come.
here. I'm
Oh.
here right now. I'm just not on screen.
Fair enough.
Not sure why.
I think you may have hit your video stop button.
I did not.
Yeah, I'm not getting the video either, so some reason.
It says you cannot start your, oh, there you go. I'm back. Okay.
All right,
Vasu,
let's-
are you having issues, Vasu?
Yeah, maybe I have to close and restart. So, yeah. Yes, no, I'm good. I got a message. Okay.
I've
Thank
answered.
Mr. Chair, are you ready?
We're ready. Let's move on, Mr. President. Thank you.
Well, good morning. I'm excited to bring a briefing on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm going to give a quick presentation, and then I'm going to have the chance to introduce a very special guest that I'm very excited to introduce to this body. So I'm going to share screen real quick. Can everyone see that okay?
Indeed.
All right. So this morning, I want to walk through a few data points. I think it's good at the end of the fiscal year as we start into next year to talk a little bit about where we're at as it relates to our student body and to our workforce and diversity, equity, and inclusion. As you can see, talking about our underrepresented minority undergraduate enrollment, we have been on an upward trajectory. As you'll see on the yellow bar, that is the CPE target for EKU. The blue bar is our performance. We have steadily been on the incline in this group over the last 5 years. There's data beneath the data as we think about where our primary growth is. We have seen significant growth in our Latino population. We have seen not as strong of growth in our African American student population, but as Dr. Watson alluded to earlier, we have changed our diversity recruitment strategies, and we have hired some exceptional individuals to be a part of that recruitment process for our underrepresented minority students. Looking at graduate enrollment, despite a small dip in 2016-17, we have also been on the incline with our undergraduate our UNRM graduate enrollment being above our targeted number for CPE for this year. Looking at our graduation rates, we see that the 4-year actual graduation rate, there is significant work to be done in that space. And when we look at our 6-year targets and our 6-year goals, this has been one that is kind of bounced around, and we've got to start to see some stability in this 6-year graduation rate. Dr. Watson and I have talked about this. We've got to continue to build those support services and those wraparound services for our students, particularly our underrepresented minority students, to continue to support them to ensure that if they come to this institution, they are indeed leaving with a degree within that 6-year period. I will tell you that the 6-year period is the standard by which the federal government evaluates graduation rates. I want to focus a lot on that 4-year rate and that 5-year rate. We've got to make sure the students who are coming here are focused, they're being supported, and they're seeing success in a timely fashion to walk across the stage and take that credential and hopefully go out and be very successful in everything that they want to do. First to 2nd year retention, this is a number that is very substantial, and we've seen an immense amount of success. And Dr. Marion alluded to this we saw nearly a 6%, over a 6% increase in our retention rate. Now, as you can see, it's been a bit erratic over the last several years. It goes up, it goes down. We're trending to be above the target line. We want to see that be up and very competitive with our overall first to second year retention rate. We want to make sure that we're providing those support services and those students are retaining, persisting, and graduating. Bachelor's degrees awarded. As you can see, we've actually been on the decline since 2017. I will say that this is very much, as we look at our bachelor's degree awarded, we were well above our target threshold. The impact of enrollment declines, continuing student populations, and overall graduating classes, we've seen that we've kind of bottomed out this year. So this trend line is slightly different than the institutional trend line overall, but we have been getting smaller with our overall number of bachelor degrees awarded. I will tell you that this is a high target area, one, because those students need that type of support. The other thing is that there is a disproportionate impact to our underrepresented minority and low income students during this time of pandemic, as we think about the resources available for students to not only to come to college, but to retain and to graduate. And this is a trend line that we've got to do better with as it relates to degree production. Not only is it's the moral and ethical thing to do to serve the student, but this is a very high value area within the performance funding metrics that are being evaluated for each institution. Let's shift to our employee population really quickly. It's no surprise to this group that we have been getting smaller as an institution overall for the better part of the last 5 to 7 years. As you can see, our target rate from CPE was at 8.8%. This year we were at 9.4%. We will report out, as Dr. Watson said, in that October reporting time frame, but we have been above the target threshold. But we have been in decline in overall underrepresented minority management within the institution's occupations. Where we've really seen a precipitous decline is in our tenured and tenure track faculty. Where we were at target in 2015-16, we have been in a decline. Now, we have seen a lot of retirements. We've seen a lot of individuals choose to pursue their opportunities elsewhere during this period of time, and we have not had the ability to rehire positions during this period of time to backfill those. I've talked a little bit with with Dr. Moore, who I'm going to introduce in just a minute. There's a lot of opportunity here for us to think about how we conduct searches, how we compose search committees, and how we recruit and retain diverse candidates for these positions. This is an ongoing concern for me as it relates to our tenured and tenure track faculty, and making sure that we have representation in the classroom for those students who we are recruiting here, who are part of that underrepresented minority population as well. From an overall standpoint, our overall employee numbers. I'm sorry. Let me launch this back. Small technical difficulty here. This is our overall full-time employment numbers during that same period of time. We are down 6.5% year over year. We're down 24.6% over the last 5 years in our total employee population numbers. So one thing that we've got to do as we reverse our enrollment trends, hopefully we can start to see more opportunity for revenue production, is that the institution, we will be able to rehire and fill positions that to this point we've not been able to hire and fill during that same period of time. Before I introduce Dr. Danny Moore, I've invited him to be with us this morning to share some of his thoughts and ideas about his new role as the Vice President of Strategic Initiatives, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Let me stop there and see if there's any questions about, and these are the data points that get reported to CPE every year. It's where we're evaluated for diversity, equity, and inclusion as an institution. And I will tell you that there is much work for us to do on this front. The thing that I'm most excited about is that we've got an established and an experienced practitioner who has chosen to be a part of EKU to bring him and his family here to the Richmond community to help lead this initiative from that position, but with the full support of the administration, the faculty, the staff, and I know this board to be sure that EKU is a part of the solution to not only to provide opportunity for all students, but to make sure that those students who leave this institution go out and make the world a better place. So I'll entertain any questions that anyone may have prior to me introducing Dr. Moore.
Any questions for the president? I don't know
I
about
do.
you all.
I have one, actually not a question. I was invited to participate in a diversity committee at the University of Houston. And the trend that we're seeing in our universities, we're seeing in all the other smaller universities. The large universities have the budget, have the capability to truly hire minorities. What is happening, what we're seeing is that we're actually training minorities, sending them out there, and they go to the bigger schools. So Dr. McFadden, your trend is right. Your trend is national. And I really applaud the efforts that we have made. I welcome Dr. Moore. I've been trying to meet with him before, but I know that he's busy. And I know that I want the board to understand that because of our location, we just happen to be a predominantly white university that has done darn well in recruiting minorities. Now, we're a long way to go. I'm not saying we're there yet, but I think the effort, the heart, and the focus has been there. So, Dr. Mafan, the reason I budged in was to let you know those numbers, what you presented is something that I saw in other universities as well. And it's not an excuse, but it's the national trend. And as far as we are trying, we're really doing a good job. So thank you very much. I think the team at EKU has been phenomenal. The people that have worked and bringing Dr. Moore, I think is going to be a new initiative. I'm looking forward to meeting him, to seeing his idea and to supporting what you guys are doing in this area. Thank you.
Well, if there are no other questions for the president, I am anxious to hear from Dr. Moore. So with that, perhaps we should introduce our new Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Chief Diversity Officer. Dr. Moore, the floor is yours.
Yeah, unmute that real quick. I believe Dr. Moore is muted.
You're on mute, Dr. Moore.
Should be able to speak now, though.
Dr. Moore, you may need to change your microphone in Zoom.
Okay.
There you go, Dr. Moore. I think we can hear you now.
Okay, can you hear me now?
We can. Yeah. Thank you, sir.
Okay, I had to pivot. My microphone, for some reason, just went out in my headphones. So I do apologize. I teach a course on technology and I was having technology difficulties. So I think the task for me is to really talk a little bit about myself. So, and then a little bit about what attracted me to this role. So I'm gonna do that, and hopefully I can do that in a couple minutes. So if you have questions for me, I will happily answer those questions. So as Dr. McFadden mentioned, I currently work at Northern Kentucky University, been there the last 10 years. I serve as our Chief Student Affairs Officer, but in my portfolio, I'm tasked with embedding diversity, equity, inclusion really into the core of the student experience. So what attracted me to this opportunity was really the team that was in place and the good work that was already happening. You know, I think as Juan mentioned, what some of the challenges that we see, I look at those as opportunities, and those are similar opportunities that we see across the country. Whether we're thinking about diverse faculty, I like to say, we do a great job of hiring new faculty because we know that some of the big schools are approaching our faculty. So for me, I think it's important that we look for new ways to attract some new faculty to our campus. I also think it's important that we highlight and showcase diversity as a strategic imperative. So when I think about this position, it wasn't a separate thing over there. So a lot of times we see diversity as this thing that we have off to the side. And I really like the way that the team that created this position and created this opportunity really saw diversity as important enough to really be embedded into the strategic initiatives and the strategic plan of the institution. So I was really excited about the team in place, the good work that was already happening. And I'm really excited to come in and see where I can work with the colleagues, because I like to say one person can't change the numbers, right? Like it's going to take everyone on campus understanding that truly, and I said this in my interview, that the president is truly the chief diversity officer. My job is to really help him understand where we have opportunities to make some tweaks that can really give us some gains in this area. So I've had that opportunity to do that work here. I worked at the University of Texas at Arlington, and I'm really excited to be joining a team that's already doing work. I sent a quick chat to Dr. Watson about her great presentation, and we're already seeing the numbers shift in the right direction. I've worked with CP, and I presented our diversity plan for Northern Kentucky University. So I have experience with drafting that plan. I know what they're looking for. And I really believe we're on the right track. It's just going to take really me pulling all the people into the room and talk about how we can work together to really move us to that next level. So I'm excited. The countdown is on. We're packing up our house now. My family's ready to make the move to Richmond in a few weeks.
Well, Dr. Moore, on behalf of the Board of Regents, welcome to EKU.
Thank you.
We look forward to meeting you in person and seeing the good work that you are going to do. I believe that we are an ambitious board. I believe that our expectations are high. Last year, when we redid our bylaws, we created a diversity and inclusion committee of the board, because we think it's that important for the entire body to think about this on a periodic basis when we meet as a board. And so Regent Castro is the chair of that committee, and I expect that he will be reaching out to you to talk about ways in which the board can support you and the work that you're doing. And like I said, we're just thrilled to have you, and very anxious to have you take your black NKU shirt off and put on a maroon E shirt on.
Mr. Chair, I would be remiss if I didn't thank Dr. Poffenberger, Christy Middleton, and Dr. Wasson, who were the tri-chairs for this search. It was a nationwide search that had nearly 50 applicants from all over the U.S. It was an incredibly competitive pool. We worked through that process and in council with the President's Inclusive Excellence Committee, which was established this time last year to help guide the institution in really being excellent, Regent Castro, in diversity, equity, and inclusion for our students, for our faculty, for our staff, to make sure that EKU is that institution that has opportunity for everyone. And so Dr. Moore rose to the top. He is going to be an amazing addition to our leadership team. I know that every member of my cabinet who, as they participated in the search process, were really blown away by him and the fact that he is going to bring an amazing impact to the culture, to the knowledge and to the outcomes for EKU. So we're excited to have Dr. Moore and his family join us very soon.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can I ask a few questions real quick?
Absolutely. Thank you. Please do.
One of the questions that I received from one of our faculty members in one of my recent communications about the upcoming board meeting was that, can the university give consideration to also tracking and counting Native American populations and acknowledging we have Native American faculty? So that was just one question. You don't have to necessarily answer it right now. And then we've spoke a good bit about, recruitment, but is the institution in a position to commit to having listening sessions related to the the campus culture. I believe that there's a true appetite among or committed to supporting Dr. Moore in his new role. There's a tremendous appetite among our faculty and our students, and I imagine our staff, to be asking ourselves, what can we do better? We as an institution have some of the leading faculty in America that look at some of the policies associated with structural racism as it impacts police policies. We know how to educate and train police well, and we also have evidence and researchers on our campus that know where policies haven't worked. And beyond just recruiting, we as an institution are educators, and many of our faculty are involved in the public health crises of racism, as well as their ugly cousins, poverty, and a few other issues. So can we commit to supporting those kinds of conversations? Because from a board member looking into the future for the long-term interests of the university, if we don't have those conversations, it will make those recruitment conversations all the more difficult. Almost like a top to bottom assessment of what we're doing, and then just really just listening, particularly to folks of color and other populations that have historically been underrepresented on our campus.
Dr. Marion, as you know, we are a very diverse board when compared to other boards throughout the Commonwealth. And I think that not only are we open to having those conversations, I think we're hungry for them. I can envision a situation where freshman orientation includes a segment regarding unconscious bias to help educate our student population that's coming in for the first time and living away from home for the first time, how to interact with people that are different or look different or from different backgrounds. So those are all things that I think are on the table. And having said that, I'll take a step back and allow the president and his team to put forth a plan and report back to the board. But I think everything's on the table, and I think we're hungry for solutions. And I think we're hungry to see EKU be a university that is excellent in its diversity and inclusion. I've said this before, Dr. Marion, we have a proud tradition in this institution of, with respect to diversity and inclusion. As I sit here in the Coates building, in the administration building, I'm sitting in the old boardroom, which has pictures of all the regents, all the student body presidents, all the presidents and board chairs, at least up until about 10 years ago. And Nancy, your picture is just here to my right, and Alan's picture is just over there. And I really enjoy this room because it has everybody. It's sort of like all the past board members and presidents and administrators are looking at you and saying, hey, we've done a good thing with the university. We've been good stewards for 100 years. It's your turn now. And as I sit here, I'm sitting right across from the first African-American student body president or student regent, which was in 1971. And if you think about what was happening in this country in the late 60s, early 70s, and for this institution to have a diverse representative on this body is amazing. And that's a proud history that we have. That's part of the legacy that Dr. Martin had for this institution that we are stewards of. So we're hungry for it. We're so excited to have Dr. Moore here. We're so excited that David has embraced the work that we started last year in increasing our attention to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So I'm right there with you. I think the board is too, Dr. Marion.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And by no means is it a condemnation of what we've done as an institution. I believe we've been ahead of the curve. But I think for this moment in our history, this meeting on this occasion, amidst all the other things going on, that it would all of us are in probably agreement on thinking these things, and it's uncomfortable to say, but at the same time, that we as a board or as a group, and I don't want to take away from Dr. McFadden and Dr. Moore. So Dr. Moore hasn't even started yet. I've already given him a task or whatever, but that we acknowledge that we need to have these conversations. I think it's implicit or implied in some of the work that they're going to do, but as a board, that we as a board support that conversation on campus.
Dr. Marion, Regent Marion, if I may, to be very direct to answer your questions, as Dr. Moore and I have talked about the transition in, there's three kind of pillars of things that are going to be fundamental that we get to right out of the gate. First and foremost is going to be an organizational redesign. We've got to align our organization to support the work around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And while Dr. Moore is amazing and he is an accomplished practitioner in this space, he cannot do this alone. And we will not be successful if he has to do this alone. And so we're not looking to do that in that way. Second is going to be about these campus conversations. Programmatically, we are going to have a revitalized and reimagined set of discussions on this campus so that we have the chance to be able to engage everyone everywhere about how we can be better as it relates to cultural competency, inclusivity, unconscious bias, all of those things. And those things are not going to just be for students. They're going to be for staff and for faculty as well, and for our community to invite them in. The third thing is going to be a comprehensive change in our training program. It's no longer going to be sufficient to simply say that we do our EEO, harassment, and non-discrimination training every year. That's not going to be sufficient for what we want to do institutionally. And so John Dixon is already starting to pull some things together. Dr. Moore will be a big part of that as we start to redesign our training protocols on this campus to make sure that everyone has the tools necessary and the exposure to the training that is necessary for them to be the best global citizen they can be for the type of change that is needed. So you will see a very comprehensive program that will dovetail nicely into our diversity, equity, and inclusion strategic plan. So I do appreciate that. We are thinking about that, and you will see at our September meeting, hopefully the rollout of some substantial programming and opportunities for those discussions.
And I would just add, I think you hit on the nail a large portion of the work that I need to be doing. I think it's important that I provide the qualitative perspective to go with the numbers that you just saw. So when we think about my role, it truly should be assessing climate. And sometimes, we may hear things that aren't overly popular. And I think those are opportunities for us to figure out how we can do better. So whether that's looking at climate, I talked to the search committee about, how I love the uncomfortable conversation. I love to facilitate it. I love to have it. At NKU, every student that goes through orientation, we have a presentation, whether it's me or someone on my team presenting to each student at orientation. And we talk about what is diversity? What does that really mean? And what does that mean for our community? So I am up for the task and very excited, but you hit right on the nail some of the things that we have to do right away. And I think the IR team is impressive. So my work to really look at the stories that go behind the numbers to figure out some of the small tweaks we can make to make our institution better. So I am very excited and looking forward to definitely working with the people that are in place.
I see the thumbs up, the 2 thumbs up from Dr. Marion. Well, Dr. Moore, again, very excited that you're part of the team, and I can't wait to see you wearing maroon.
It's good.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have Dr. Pagachnik, Executive Vice President and Provost, to give us an update on academic affairs.
All right, thank you, Chair Diaz, members of the board. It's my pleasure to give you a brief update. We've got a number of items on agenda items on the action agenda for today. So I'm going to be very brief this morning with just a few announcements, mainly related to personnel. First of all, I'd like to also add on behalf of Academic Affairs, my welcome to Dr. Moore. Really excited to have him on board. And I had an opportunity to talk to his friend and colleague up at NKU as part of the Chief Academic Officers meeting on Friday. And he was very complimentary and told us what a great move we made in hiring Dr. Moore. And so their losses are gained, but we're really very excited to have him on board. And I look forward to working with him in his role on the Vice President's President's Cabinet and Chief Diversity Officer. A couple other quick announcements. As many of you know, Dr. Vic Kapler, Dean of the College of Justice and Safety, is retiring today after 27 years of service to EKU. We're grateful for his long record of outstanding service and his achievements and wish him well in his retirement. I've asked Dr. Derek Paulson, who is currently Associate Dean of the College, to step in as interim dean, and he's agreed to do so. And I want to thank him for his past service, but also going forward as interim dean of the college. And then we do anticipate that we'll be launching a national search for Dean of the College of Justice and Safety beginning sometime this fall. Also, Dr. Jennifer Weiss begins her official appointment as Associate Provost for Academic Programs today. Dr. Robinson also, as you know, retired at the end of May after also almost 30 years of service to EKU. So Jennifer was a faculty member in our Department of Anthropology, Sociology, and Social Work, I guess several years ago before she left for Ball State University. She was in charge of our program review process then, and really was kind of instrumental in getting it started along with Tana Lee and some others. So she went on to Ball State to be professor of Department of Anthropology and director of their assessment program, and worked with their accreditation team. And so we're really excited to have her back in the EKU family. Although she officially begins today, as you've probably seen in the slide, she has been a prominent part of the contingency planning group. She started almost as soon as she was named in the position. I'm really excited about having her on board. And then finally, a familiar face to all of you, because he's presented and been leading the Faculty Initiatives Innovators Program, is Dr. Tom Martin. He was appointed as Interim Vice President for Research and Economic Development in January of 2018 when I took on this role. And he's done really an outstanding job. And so he will begin on tomorrow his appointment as Associate Provost for Research and Economic Development. And I'm really looking forward to having Tom and Jennifer as part of a strong administrative team, and within academic affairs, a strong leadership team to complement our team of outstanding deans. So those are just some quick personnel updates. Dr. McKinnon and several others have talked to you a little bit about what happened, our plans for going forward. And I just want to talk just a little bit about what happened in spring of 2020 and how we met the challenge. You know, when we came back from spring break, it was kind of all hands on deck and trying to have to shift from the vast majority of our courses being face-to-face to remote learning in an extraordinarily difficult time frame. It came with a high degree of angst, both among faculty and students, and understandably so. But at the end of the day, I think that we've made some temporary changes in policies and procedures. Our faculty really went above and beyond the call of duty in assisting students. That's not saying that everybody was always on board, but the vast majority, I think, did an outstanding job in terms of meeting the needs of the students, and the students stepped up and did an outstanding job as well. And so, you know, one of the things that I think is just an important measure, when we went into this, we were really afraid about what the impact of shifting to online learning or remote learning was going to be for our students in the midst of this pandemic with everything else going on. And, you know, one measure of that, just so the board knows about this, is that you can look at the failure rate or the F rate of students in the classroom at the end of the semester. And this semester in spring 2020, it was statistically insignificant, the difference between this semester and previous semesters. And so I think that's really kind of a testament to the faculty and to the students, and just shows how far we've come and how we are able to respond. So, and then finally, I want to thank Regent Lipscomb and SGA. She passed along concerns from the student body to academic affairs. We were able to work collaboratively on a number of things, and I want to thank her and her team for her leadership and for her contributions to making what could have been a disaster into really, I think, an outstanding success. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Are there any questions for the provost? There being none, Jerry, I thank you for the report and look forward to hearing from you later during the action items. With that, let's move to the presentation by the Department of Athletics. Matt Roan, Athletics Director. Sir, the floor is yours.
Can y'all see that presentation at all? You can? Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm looking between two different monitors, so I appreciate the opportunity this morning to just give a little brief update on really kind of how we got to where we are right now. It seems like a long time since I had a chance to present to this group in February, and a lot has happened between then and now, and I appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit with you. Just to again go over some of our spring and winter highlights. Very proud of the fact that our men's basketball team finished in the top 4 of the regular season standings. We're fortunate enough to play Belmont in the OVC tournament semifinals after beating Tennessee State in the quarterfinals. That was our first trip to the conference tournament since 2015. Prior to COVID, we had accepted an invitation to play in the 2020 collegeinsider.com postseason tournament. And I'm particularly proud of Coach A.W. Hamilton for being recognized as the OVC Coach of the Year this past year. What he has done with that program in a short amount of time is very, very impressive. And I will say that Coach Samantha Williams, what she has done with our women's basketball program in half that time is nothing short of impressive as well. Our women's basketball team 2 years ago had 0 Division I wins. This past year, I believe they had 10th, which represented the 4th biggest turnaround nationally. And so our basketball teams, both men's and women's, are in great hands and excited for the future of both of those. But not to be outdone, our baseball and softball teams, as everybody knows and is well documented, they were 34-4 before COVID hit and shut down those programs. Our softball team were winners of 18 games in a row, which I don't care what level you're playing at. That is incredibly hard to do. Our baseball team was 12-2. Their only 2 losses were on the road in Baton Rouge at LSU. They won the Friday night game. They lost on Saturday and Sunday, but still, nevertheless, 34-4 between those 2 programs. Winners of 18 in a row for softball. We were in prime position, I think, for big springs for those 2 programs before everything that started happening. On March the 12th, just to do a little bit of a recap and give you all some important dates, you know that the NCAA canceled on that day the men's basketball and women's basketball tournaments, as well as all remaining winter and spring championships. And on that day, the OVC suspended the competition until further notice. One day later, on March the 13th, the NCAA announced eligibility relief for any student athlete that played in the spring. And so just to clear up any confusion, any student athlete who was on a team this spring after the winter sports concluded with basketball, so outdoor track and field, men's and women's golf, baseball, softball, beach volleyball, all of those student athletes, it's as if that spring never happened, even though we had got through the non-conference portions of our schedule, basically. And so those seniors will be allowed to return this year, and we're very, very, very proud in the department that we're going to be able to welcome those seniors back to complete their senior year. And we're going to do that within the budget and finding some attrition and some efficiencies inside of our budget. But then also every freshman, sophomore, and junior who had their seasons impacted as well, you know, they will become and return as far as eligibility goes as freshmen, sophomore, and juniors next year. On March the 16th, you know that the cancellation of all OVC athletic competitions occurred, including those championships. So in effect, that date was the date that being an athletics director was not very fun because we weren't directing any athletics at that point in time. And then from that point really on, the only thing that we were doing inside of the department was offering, for student athletes specifically, was offering in-person sports medicine and sports performance services for injury rehabilitation only. And then we stopped that and went remote only out of fear and out of concern for some of the things that were happening pretty quickly at beginning of April, and then I'll get back to where we are now. On March the 26th, the NCAA announced a reduction in revenue as a result of the loss of the men's basketball tournament. What the NCAA was anticipating giving to us in fiscal year 19-20 was about $600 million, and that represents a big number, and that's from the arrangement that they have with CBS, with Turner Sports, True TV, TNT, all of those places where when you turn on the basketball tournament, you see it for those several weeks that it's happening. We only received about $225 million that was given to the membership. The impact here at EKU was approximately a $665,000 loss. That said, we have a balanced budget this year. And that is a credit to our administration, Barry Pointer, Dr. McFadden. That is a credit to our coaches. That's a credit to our staff for really tightening the belt. You see that our budget was at $14.847 million. As the end of business yesterday, we had spent about 14.5. So a little bit about $350,000 that we came in to the black. So very proud of that fact, and a ton of credit goes to our team and athletics, our coaches, our staff, for doing just that. I'll admit it, when you see that you're not going to be getting $665,000, there's a certain amount of panic that sets in. But because we were not playing our spring sports, because our coaches gave up, some things that maybe they had been promised by me, my predecessor, a hiring freeze, a spending freeze. Very, very proud of the fact that we do have a balanced budget for this year. In terms of revenues, as I shared with you in February, that is something that we're going to be very, very cognizant of. It's something that we have to grow if our department is going to grow. I did just want to share a quick update that our football season ticket renewals were mailed out in May. And about 2 weeks later, our Colonel Club annual fund appeals had gone out. That deadline is July 15th for our season ticket renewals, at which point we'll start selling those seats to other individuals in anticipation for our fall sports season resuming on time. And again, I'll get that here in just a moment. Again, just to reinforce, we are going to be resource focused from this point forward. We're going to be tracking ticketed sales, our donations, our sponsorships. In our opinion, and you can see those 4 things I've highlighted, that fan engagement is key to complement the fan experience. We have to do a better job, and I heard that loud and clear from this board in February when I had the chance to present to you. We know that we need to do a much better job of getting people into our venues and making sure that those attendance numbers, those ticket sales are high. We are going to make a renewed focus on scholarships in our side of our Colonel Club. I think there's some confusion sometimes when individuals give to the Colonel Club, where those funds go. Do they help support operations? Are they paying salaries? We are committed to making sure that individuals understand that when they give a gift to the Colonel Club, that goes directly to support student athlete scholarships. And I hope that this board will help us in joining the Colonel Club and getting other individuals involved to help in that area as well. I will say that as I've shared before, we have a partnership with Learfield IMG College for our multimedia rights sales, our sponsorship sales. There was some debate during COVID. We have a guarantee model. There was some debate about going to a revenue share model. But I'm proud to say that as we came through this and realizing kind of where we were, that guarantee model is what we're going to continue on track for. And then finally, just continuing to look at creative revenue streams, whether that's billboards or the way that we market. There's some different opportunities that we think we have ahead of us that are going to boost our revenue side of the house. No presentation is complete without sharing with you our academic success of our student athletes. All the credit in the world, again, goes to our coaches. It goes to our staff, in particular our Bratsky Student Athlete Academic Success Center staff led by Monica Bambo. Our student athletes as well. This was an unusual semester, but for us to have the highest term GPA ever at a 3.368, which represents our 17th straight semester above a 3.0, that is telling for just how detail-oriented, how committed to student success that staff is, that the Bratsky staff is, and our student athletes as well. 230 of our 290 student athletes earned a 3.0 or higher, which represents 79.3% of our whole entire student athlete population. 69 recorded a perfect 4.0, as you can see. And then 11 of our 16 teams had the highest term GPA in their program's history. APR, which again represents our ability to return student athletes that they choose to return, but also that they're eligible to return when they do. They recently announced scores from academic year 18-19. Again, you can see we had several teams with a perfect single year score, but I think more telling, our men's and women's golf team tallied perfect multi-year scores. So a credit to Coach Moore and Coach Whitson on that. to use our expect to win, a play off of that, that our board chairman is so passionate about. We do expect to return, as Brian McAdam shared with you a few minutes ago. We began welcoming back student athletes in phases for voluntary workouts on June the 8th. I promise you, we are adhering to federal, state, local, university, NCAA, OVC, so many different orders, policies, and guidance that we've received. There's a lot to manage, but I believe that our staff, and particularly I want to give credit to Jeff Carrico and Mark Howard on our staff for working so closely with Brian. I'm very, very confident in our process. Our student athletes, upon return, were evaluated for clearance. That led from about 7 days up till June 8th when they started returning. They are continuing to be monitored daily, and they're expected to adhere, and we're trying to educate as much as we can on our health and safety protocols. What we call summer access, I think what others call sport-specific activities, where coaches are allowed to get in front of those student athletes from June 8th until really some point in July. Those activities are confined to sport performance, strength and conditioning, for just to use a layman's term. But starting in July, our coaches are going to have the opportunity to visit with our student athletes, to engage in sport-specific activities, to meet, to review film, to install playbooks, things of that nature. And we fully expect training camps to open at the first part of July for our fall sports. I will tell you today that our intent is to play our fall season scheduled, but we will adjust our operations to protect student athletes, fans, and guests to the best of our ability. Adjustments, as you can see, may include less individuals on the playing surface at any given time. We're looking very closely at gates of entry, how we can disperse crowds. Digital ticketing is going to be an option so that people aren't handing over a paper ticket. Cleaning efforts prior to, during, and after events. Certainly protection equipment for our frontline staff. I will say today again on June the 30th that we are prepared for 100% occupancy, but reality would suggest that we're planning for 50% and 25% contingencies at Roy Kidd Stadium, Alumni Coliseum for volleyball, and certainly our EKU soccer field, so that our fall sports will at least be covered. Yesterday I was on a call with the OVC, and the idea that widespread testing is something that I know that we have to get a grip on between now and then, and determine how that we would administer that. Face shields, every detail is being discussed. Face shields that cover up an entire football student athlete's face mask is something that's being discussed, to take a high risk sport and maybe make that a little bit more medium risk. But I will tell you, I think that we have a obligation to share a message of hope. And that message of hope is that our students are going to return in the fall, and our student athletes are going to be competing on the fields and hopefully bringing a lot of pride to EKU's campus and its region that we serve. And so with that, I am open to questions. And I appreciate the opportunity to share a few thoughts and remarks this morning with you.
Thank you, Mr. Athletics Director. Are there any questions for Mr. Roan?
I don't have a question, Chair Diaz, but I would like to make a comment to the board. I really want to encourage the board, as Matt mentioned earlier about the Colonel Club. I really encourage the board everyone needs to join the Colonel Club. It's on the board, and I would encourage everyone to join at the Elite 100 level. I think that would just send a great message out to our student athletes, as you can see how well they're performing in the classroom as well as on the field. But I really encourage each member of the board to join the Colonel Club.
Thank you.
And just Mr. Rowan, this Regent Vasudevan. Yes, thank you for your presentation. And I just want to echo what you mentioned, Mr. Rowan, already. Our administration has done a great job in terms of balancing the budget for this year. And special credits goes to David and Barry Pointer on this, I would think. And also, we just have a plan as to when we would expect to return. So that should take care of things here for us. So that's all I got to share. Thank you.
I appreciate it. I want to be
Go ahead,
really,
man.
if you don't mind, again, I can't brag on them enough. Our coaches, our student athletes, to say that it was an unusual semester, I know that our entire campus felt that the uniqueness of this, but to take our student athletes who had, maybe participated in football or basketball or baseball since the time that they were 6, 7 years old, and to say, hey, you can't do that anymore. The resolve that they showed to, again, come back the way that they have with our voluntary workouts to perform the way that they did in the classroom. But I would be remiss as well if I didn't thank the faculty. It was an unusual semester for them as well. And they're phenomenal educators. They were incredible partners throughout this process. And our academic success would not have been possible without our faculty as well. So a credit to them is in order.
Thank you, sir. And thank you for the positive disposition of your presentation and your continued diligence in expecting to return.
I appreciate it. Expect to win and return, right?
Yes, sir. If there are no further questions for the athletics director, at this time, I hand the floor over to Ethan Witt, Director of Government and Community Relations, to give us an update on legislative affairs. Ethan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board, President McFadden. I was asked to give a brief update to update this board on where we ended things with the legislative session, as well as several important things that we're working on currently and looking toward in the future. It's really amazing to think about all that's unfolded since I last appeared before this group at the end of February. At that point, we were just over halfway through the legislative session. We were hopeful that for the first time since 2008, higher ed in Kentucky would have an increase in funding. And we had a lot of important initiatives before the General Assembly, and little did we know that just about 2 weeks from that meeting, things would essentially come to a grinding halt. At that point, perhaps our most important initiative was in progress, and that was preserving EKU's ability to operate model lab school, given a ruling from the previous Commissioner of Education the previous year. I'm happy to report House Bill 366 eventually passed both chambers with unanimous votes and was signed by Governor Beshear, and essentially secured Model's ability to continue operating as a lab school in Kentucky. And most importantly, for the first time since its existence, it has been designated as a public K-12 school in Kentucky. And while House Bill 366 had no additional funds for Model, no new funds for Model, it did put in place a mechanism to protect the funds that Model has. It removed the third-party pass-throughs that we had previously had to rely on and put us on a path to continued operations and sustainability as a public school in Kentucky. And I can tell you, as many on this meeting can attest to, don't let the unanimous vote fool you. That was the result of many months of collaboration that several members of this board, that President McFadden and others, Superintendent Williamson, were instrumental in terms of building a consensus to pass a K-12 piece of legislation with unanimous votes, essentially something unheard of as far as I'm concerned. And I just want to commend everyone who lent us their efforts to help make that a possibility, including Representative Frazier and Senator Jared Carpenter. House Bill 352 was the state budget. Normally that would be the biennial budget. Again, in the world of COVID, that is a one-year budget, which is where we find ourselves beginning tomorrow, operating on a one-year state budget. It kept funding for higher ed flat. It froze the KERS employer contribution rate at 49% for a second year, and it retained the 2% stop loss for the performance funding model. Within that budget, EKU secured a very significant victory, and I hope that everyone appreciates the magnitude of that, especially in the fiscal environment in which we find ourselves. And that was $8 million in funding for EKU aviation. And this money is going to do several important things, including allow the program to scale the number of aircraft they have to meet the number of students we currently have, as well as the likely increase in students in the coming years. It's going to allow EKU to construct a permanent classroom facility at Central Kentucky Regional Airport, which is critically important because currently the students are operating out of a very cramped mobile unit that's just not conducive to growth or to supporting the current enrollment that we have. And finally, the money the General Assembly gave us will fully equip one of the 4 aviation mechanic sites that EKU is launching throughout the region in conjunction with the Appalachian Regional Commission. And I just want to thank State Senator Chris McDaniel, Chairman of the Appropriations and Revenue Committee, as well as others for their investment in EKU Aviation, for seeing the value of what this program brings to the Commonwealth as a whole, and for investing in that program during some very difficult financial times. We really appreciate their investment there. And again, that was an all hands on deck effort. Several on this call in this meeting were very helpful in getting that across the finish line. And I want to thank everyone for your assistance on that as well. The legislature also extended the deadline for employers to consider an opt-out of the KERS pension system. You may recall that we were previously looking at a deadline of May 1st, 2020 to make a decision about continued participation in KERS or a potential exit. Because of COVID, that deadline has now been extended to January 1st, 2021. And while the deadline changed, there were no other changes to the fundamentals of that exit. So what was in place previously in terms of the cost and the process remains, but that deadline has been pushed back to January 1st. So going forward, as we look to 2021, it's the short legislative session, meaning it's only a 30-day session. But again, it's going to be a budget session because we're currently on a one-year budget. Things are going to be a bit different in the off year. In the 30-day session, any revenue measure requires super majorities in both houses. So 60 votes in the House, 23 votes in the Senate. That's something to keep an eye on as we move forward. And then the other thing I think we have to be cognizant of is simply awaiting what adjustments are going to be made to the new fiscal year's state appropriation. None of us have a crystal ball and know what that is. But I think we can expect that there will likely be some decisions coming down as we get a better grasp of the revenue position and the state obligations going forward. And we'll continue engaging with the General Assembly and the Governor's office and others as that conversation begins. And then finally, I just want to mention that we've been extremely engaged with our federal delegation, especially through the process of securing the CARES Act funding and ensuring that that was dispersed in an appropriate manner. We've been in regular contact with Leader McConnell and his team, Congressman Barr and his team, as well as the U.S. Department of Education. And we will continue our involvement at the federal level, especially as potential additional measures are considered as we continue going through COVID. And with that, I'll be happy to take any questions you may have.
Any questions for Mr. Witt?
Mr. Chair, I might offer that Ethan has done amazing work in this space. This has been one of the most successful legislative sessions for Eastern Kentucky University in my nearly 10 years of being here. Ethan, I know that it took a lot of hands on deck, but you really moved the needle in a very material way for our institution, and we are very thankful for your hard work.
Thank you.
Indeed, since I've been on the board, preserving the model laboratory school status and future has been something that's been front and center. And I think that we've accomplished that. There's still work to do there, but the threat, I think, is not as substantial as it was maybe a year ago. And secondarily, this body will remember talking about aviation and our opportunities in aviation. And those conversations matter. And those conversations have resulted in tangible action, both here at the institution and in Frankfurt. So in that regard, Mr. President, I commend you, the team, Ethan, in educating legislators about what we can offer, about programs that are capable of driving growth, both economically and in degree attainment for the Commonwealth, and gaining their support for those programs. That's something that we'll obviously continue to do more on as opportunities present themselves. So thank you to both of you for the work that you're doing in that space.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is Bettina Gardner and Dr. Tanley Wasson to talk about SAFE funding.
Thank you, Chair Diaz, Regents, and President McFadden for giving me the chance to update you on the Student Assistance Fund for Eastern, or as we've come to know it, SAFE. SAFE, and I will tell you that it was actually Dr. McFadden who coined that acronym. So kudos, who knew he was that creative? SAFE is a combined initiative from the Student Success Center and the Office of Retention and Graduation. And SAFE provides short-term financial help to students who are unable to meet an immediate and essential expense. So for instance, we have students who might have their car break down. They might be short hours at their job. They might have medication that they need to buy. And a small snafu like that can derail some of our students. And then suddenly their focus is not on persisting in their classes. Many of our faculty and many of our staff are very aware when these things happen to our students, and often they get referred to Dr. Laura Vance in the Student Success Center. I can't acknowledge enough the commitment to this initiative from Dr. Vance, Dr. Tanley Wasson, and President McFadden. They have been unwavering in their commitment to get the SAFE initiative off the ground. Some of you know that at the university, we can be a little bit slow in terms of our bureaucratic processes, but I will tell you, we were able to establish this fund with the help of Brad Compton, folks in the development office, and others at the university to get it up and running in the shortest time. I think I've never seen anything get going this quickly at the university. So kudos to everybody who helped that happen quickly. Dr. Vance approached me in the fall and explained this to me, this phenomena where she often gets students referred to her who have these small emergency expenses and they need help immediately. And we didn't have a pot of money for that. We're one of the few public universities in Kentucky. We're one of the few universities and colleges in Kentucky that did not have a donor-led emergency fund for students. So it's growing and it's small right now, but we have certainly seen the commitment of our donor community to get SAFE up and running and growing even stronger. Immediately after the quarantine went into effect, we saw that many of our students were flung into situations that created housing insecurity, food insecurity, the need for medical help. Many of them even needed some help with their children and providing expenses for their children. And so when I say to you all that we started this fund quickly, is really an understatement, because by March 27th, we were already beginning to award money for these emergency situations. And that's pretty quick at this university. I want to tell you a little bit about the process. Again, kudos to Dr. Vance. There was a young man named Dylan Hanshaw, and she consulted with him to ask him, because he was a student who'd been to her before, asking for help in different ways. And she said, help me design a process that's empathetic, that's not intimidating, that's private, and more importantly, we need it to be simple so that these funds can get distributed quickly. So she did that. She developed a process that's so quick and thorough that we were able to use it for distribution of the CARES funding. And that was really important because, as Dr. Wasson stated earlier, we already have distributed a good portion of that money, most of that money, and that is because we did have this process in place. So she was pretty great in how she designed that process with a student giving her input. So I want to tell you all a little bit about the numbers. You'll see there on my slide. Hopefully you all can see that. 124 students have been awarded SAFE funds. A total of 44,000 dollars have been awarded, and the average award is about $350. But you'll look to see that we had over 639 applicants. Now, we have that number of applicants because we're also using this for the CARES funding distribution, and 300 of those 600 students have been awarded CARES money. So they're in an evaluation process. The other thing you should know about the process is that in addition to either getting SAFE funding or CARES funding, students are also put in touch with other people who can help them with their needs. So it's not just, we're going to give you some money to help you through this emergency financial situation. We're also going to put you in touch with people who can help you in other ways. So I know I can't say enough about Dr. Vance in this process, but I know she will tell you that she has a village of people who are helping her to get that money in the hands of students. So Laura, I know, I hear you. I can hear you. So far, private donations, we have raised $108,795. That is just since April 5th. Giving Tuesday Now, which was a social media initiative designed by the philanthropic community, and it was specifically in response to the COVID-19 emergency. And so we haven't really done any kind of formal ask of our donor community, mainly social media, soft asks. Our president has certainly strong-armed some of us to giving, and we have had great support from our boards, the Foundation Board, the Alumni Board, and certainly the Board of Regents. Right now, we have about 538 unique donors. That is, and what that represents, 2% of those donors are current students. 6% of those donors have never given to the university ever. This is just since April 5th. So these are numbers that we look at in development to see if we might grow initiatives from this. So we're pretty happy about that. That $108,000 does reflect money from the Alumni Board. They had some discretionary money that they were able to give us, the Center for the Arts Board, and an amount of money that the President's office gave us to get started. So there's that. In terms of what we look for in development, we look for those numbers, like I told you, that current students are giving, and there are new and unique donors to this fund. What we want to know too is why donors give. And this quote, one of you may recognize this quote. This quote is the indication that we get from most of our donors. You'll notice that last line. He remembers his poor college days very well. That is what we're hearing. I remember being that student who didn't have enough gas money to get to work. I remember being that student who didn't get all my hours at work. I remember being that student who had a hard time making rent. That's what we're hearing from all of the donors who are giving to this fund. So we feel like we've tapped into a donor base that cares so much about the community. Most of these gifts are not large, but they are gifts that come from very warm hearts. And we are very grateful to them, as I know the students are who have received the money that have gotten them through this. So any questions? Tanley or Dr. Watson, would you like to jump in and say anything?
I think you covered everything. I reiterate her praise for Dr. Vance. She's been amazing in guiding us through a process that is good for our students, that our students feel comfortable with. And it's just a great team of folks. It's not just her reviewing. We have a team of folks reviewing every application, working with those students individually and making them feel comfortable with their ask and making sure they get their funds as quickly as possible. So it's a team effort. They've done an amazing job. I'll also say the financial aid office does a big lift. They have to check every student to be sure that they're eligible for funds, and they do the award process quickly. So it is definitely a team effort and a good one for our students, as you can see already.
Bettina, Tanli, thank you for first for identifying the need for a SAFE fund and then quickly adjusting it to utilize it as a mechanism to quickly distribute CARES funding. Are there any questions for Bettina or for Tanli with respect to the SAFE? There being no questions, I thank you all. And I now move to the financial update. Barry Pointer, Vice President of Financial Affairs, will now provide an update.
Thank you, Chairman Diaz. Let me share my screen here. Hopefully everyone can see this screen now. Looking at the budget to actual summary, this is May 31 of the current fiscal year 2020 compared to May 31 of last year. This report is the same format as you've seen before, and we're going to read across here for the current year. You can see right now with the E&G fund, our actual revenue is at 226.8. Actual expenses are 199,985 for a change in net position of $26.8 million. For the E&G fund, for the auxiliary fund, you'll see that the all auxiliaries actual revenue through May 31 is 24 million. Expenses are running at 21 million for a net change in position through May 31 of 2.9 million. So all in, we're at $29.8 million change in net position through May. Looking at the prior year down below here, you can see that our actual revenue is at 231.8. Actual expenses are 212.9. Change in net position for E&G 18.8 million. Auxiliary running at 28.5 last year for revenue. Expenses at 27.9 for a change in net position of about $639,000. So all in last year at this point, both funds running about 19.5 million change in net position. So you can kind of see the difference that we're seeing year over year, which is an improvement right now. For the month of May, it's a good position, I think, to go into the last month of the fiscal year in June. Looking at revenue, just focusing on these columns here together, you can see that for the E&G fund, we're down about $5 million in revenue year over year. For the auxiliary funds, I would point out that we're down about 4.5 million in auxiliary revenue as well. What's interesting to note is this percent of realized for the auxiliaries this year, 83.3 compared to 104 last year. With expenses for auxiliaries, 21 million this year compared to 27.9 last year. About $7 million less this year. You can also see the difference in the realized with the auxiliaries there. But at any rate, here's the story I think I wanted to share with the expenses year over year comparing E&G. This year's 199.9. Last year was 212. An improvement of about $13 million year over year. So all in, for the month of May, comparing the change in net position year over year, we're in an improved position going into June of about 2.8 million. I'm sorry, 10.3 million all in. So drilling down into the revenue, I want to focus on these revenue lines and make sure we're all on the same page as we look at this revenue comparing year over year. This year for tuition class fees, we're at 149.1 million. Last year we were at 150, a difference of about 1.1 million year over year. This year, just like last year and every other year, we'll adjust for the summer revenue that's deferred and that's related to the prior fiscal year. I'm sorry, the upcoming fiscal year. We'll defer that revenue. So for this year and last year, actually, that amount is about 3.5 million. So whenever you remove that deferral here, which we'll do in the year-end closing process, our comparison with the budget will be down about $6.5 million or so, which is what you've been hearing from us kind of all along this year, that we were trailing with our budget. So wanted to make sure we were clear about that as we move forward. Same last year, we would have in June and in the closing process last year, we would have removed the same summer deferral for the upcoming year as well. So state appropriations are down, reflecting the change we saw for fiscal year 20 compared to the prior year. Government grants and contracts are up slightly. That has to do with some timing of SEEK funding, I believe. Private gifts, grants and contracts are down slightly. Educational sales and services are down some. You heard Matt mention some of the NCAA other revenue is down. Timing of the Coke commissions and sponsorships is down. And we've also seen an impact here with our dining services commission. As things went offline in early March, we lost some commissions with our dining sales. With other sources, you'll remember that we had a difference year over year with respect to the contract terms with Barnes & Noble. So that will wash out this year. That was about 1.6 million. So that's basically a summary of the difference of the 5 million that I mentioned previously with respect to E&G revenue. Looking at expenses, the biggest difference we see year over year is in instruction. And really this is primarily labor and personnel savings year over year. Most all these have a large component of personnel and labor savings year over year. Research is basically flat. Public service, primarily operating costs have reduced in the public service area. Academic support in libraries, student services, all these areas are primarily labor savings, some operating. In the institutional support area, we had more transfers last year for capital projects. The Barnes & Noble transfer was in this area as well for the capital project that it was involved with year over year. Finally, O&M plan is about flat. It's up a little bit, but it's basically flat compared to year over year. Scholarships and fellowships is down in total 1.4 million, combination of things there. The SMART rate is up a little bit. Basically though, the VOTEC post-secondary waiver has decreased significantly. It's down about 2 million. So the net there is related to merit scholarships that Tanley and her team have done a great job this year of managing it and helping us stay within budget, at least year over year. So again, the story here is the savings on the expense side of about $13 million. Looking at auxiliary funds, this is for the current year. You can see that housing is in a positive 2.2 million change in net position for the year. Part of the reason for that strong net position right now is the timing of debt service payments. The rec center is up $457,000. Also there, you'll recall that I mentioned previously before that some of the debt service related to the rec center has paid out now, and so they're in a little bit better position at this point. Printing services is doing well. Mail center will not very meaningful right now, but that'll change as we go forward, working through as we have better comparisons year over year with their new mail center operations that we've implemented this spring. The Center for the Arts, impacted by COVID with respect to the lack of shows for the spring. We're doing refunds for shows that have been booked and canceled. We'll still be doing refunds going forward as the center is dark for the year upcoming. So those refunds will continue to wash out. And again, remember last year was an extraordinary year for the Center for the Arts. So there's that portion of the difference as well. Parking operations is doing well for the year. They've basically realized all their revenue. We didn't really do any parking refunds at all based on COVID. So they're in a good position at this point, and we're continuing to invest those funds back into the parking lot areas and where the students and faculty and staff can see their parking fees go to work. At the Whitehall site, a couple of things happened. As you know, we had a windstorm out there that took the facility offline while it was being repaired. And also the COVID impact delayed, both of those things together, both delayed the opening. Some staff out there were repurposed and put to work in other areas, as we did with other staff on campus to help. A lot of folks helped in the communications and brand management areas. So those labor dollars right now are still being charged to the historic site, and we'll be moving those and charging those out appropriately to the areas where they work. So that will improve that a little bit more. The tennis center is doing well with the $14,800 positive. University Club is doing well. Timing of some payments at the club have impacted the way the results are looking this year. And when I show you the prior year comparison, you'll see that it's not doing quite as well as it was last year, about $96,000 less. And the airport FBO is doing quite well. In spite of COVID, we still had some good sales of fuel at the airport. Looking at the prior year, you can see how the housing auxiliary units looked at this point last year. As I mentioned, housing is in a different position this year compared to last year. Again, that's timing of some payments this year, so that will equal out a little bit more. Also, the Center for the Arts was in a better position last year as well. And here's the club that I mentioned at 164 last year. So it's a little bit different, and the FBO has really turned around this year as well too. So comparing year over year, you can see that each one of these auxiliary units, you can see the variance and how the change in net position has changed from year over year. COVID has had an impact on every one of these areas. Frankly, some impacts have been different than others, but all these areas, I believe, have been impacted by COVID in one way or another. And even if it's not directly by COVID, with open and close, with respect to student use and student demand with respect to printing services or mail services or things like that. So with that, I'll try to answer any questions you may have. I do want to say how much I appreciate the support of David and the PC with respect to the extraordinary measures that we put in place this year. We halted spending for the whole month of June. We're still holding on that. We're not letting up with respect to trying to manage this year and position ourselves for a good footing going forward. We don't know what the future holds going forward with respect to the fall opening. We have every intention of opening, as you've heard from Tan Lee and you've heard from Matt Rohn and from others and from our president. But we don't know what might happen and what might change going forward, but we're still holding tight with all of our measures that we put in place. And I appreciate the support also of this board as we have put these measures in place. They have been extraordinary, but I think they put us in a good position at the end of May to head into the end of the fiscal year. So with that, I will take any questions.
Thank you, Barry. Does anybody have questions for Vice President Pointer? There are no questions. That concludes our university reports. Is anyone interested in doing another 5-minute recess, or would you prefer to keep moving? If you want to have a recess, I'd entertain a motion at this time. Lynn, I saw you raise your hand. Can you unmute, make the motion?
I move, yes, I've unmuted.
Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Regent Babbage. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We are in recess for 5 minutes, and we'll be back at that time to resume our board meeting. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I see that most of the regents are on the screen. We will do a roll call just before we start the action items. That'll happen shortly after a few additional reports. Next on the agenda is written reports from the Faculty Senate.
Chair Diaz, it's Lynn. I'm sorry. I just want to say something real quick, if I could, please.
Absolutely.
Okay. I have had occasion to talk to Vice President Pointer on numerous occasions about this budget and what we're doing. And I would be remiss if I didn't let everyone know how hard he and his team have worked to get us in the position that we are in now. He's been very creative, and I think they've probably worked some 18, 20-hour days. And I know he's lost sleep over it, probably trying to get us to where we are right now. And I think he and his staff are to be complimented, as well as President McFadden. And I wanted to make sure I said that out loud. So, okay, I'm good.
Thank you, Regent Ty.
Thank you.
The Faculty Senate Chair and Staff Council Chair have submitted written reports to the board. Those reports are in your board booklet. I went through them and read some of the comments. And in both instances, I thought that both the Faculty Senate and Staff Council were complimentary of how the university has been responding to adversity. But in addition to that, they posted questions that they were receiving through their different constituency groups. And in conversation with President McFadden, since those questions have been asked, I know that the president has had occasion and has met with the Faculty Senate and has met with the Staff Council in an appropriate, socially distanced way to answer questions that they have about the uncertainty and about moving forward. So I want to commend the president in being open to those conversations and being proactive about having those conversations. And I know that those will continue as we move forward in our plan to reopen the university. And so those are in your books. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to the Faculty Senate Chair or the Staff Council President and talk to them. And if there are things that you want to hear about, I'm sure they would be happy to talk to you. With that, I'll move to the report of the President, Dr. McFadden.
There is a written report for all the regents included in the board book. I do appreciate everyone's support. It has truly been an unprecedented first 6 months on the job. I appreciate the board members and your support, but let me echo what Regent Ty said, and that is this is a team sport. And I have the privilege to serve in this capacity with an amazing team. And as Vice President Pointer pointed out, a lot of hard work by a lot of people to get us to this position. There's also been a lot of sacrifice. And I am acutely aware of the fact that, the uncertainty with the pandemic, with the financial circumstances, the challenges that we face, that it can create a lot of uncertainty for individuals. And so if there's one thing that I want to make sure that everyone, with us here today understands is that there are brighter days ahead. That as an institution, EKU will be stronger day by day. We've got dedicated individuals, we've got dedicated board members who are willing to do the work every day to move this institution forward, to ensure that we continue to be that beacon of opportunity for so many. And so I'm very humbled by the opportunity to be here serving in this capacity at this time. I know that we are going to move forward with purpose and intentionality, and that we will continue to innovate and we will continue to win, Mr. Board Chair. And I just appreciate each one of you and your service to this institution every day. And go EKU.
Thank you, Mr. President. Next on the agenda is my report to the board, and I'll probably be a little more long-winded today than I usually am, because as we go through the meeting, you can all see that we continue to navigate through the COVID-19 pandemic. And as an institution, we find ourselves at the crossroads of what's known, what's unknown, the normal, the abnormal, of moving forward and standing still. Often questions can outnumber answers, not just here, but in all parts of our lives. Higher education isn't immune to uncertainty. And frankly, in the last few years, we have been dealt a challenging hand, and that did not get easier when institutions began to close in March. Yet, what you hear today is you find that we are prepared to resume activities as quickly as our government allows it. The ailing economy and the social uncertainty created by the pandemic have and will continue to cause the executive team to make difficult decisions. It's a tough time everywhere. But if we can find opportunities during the difficult times, we will create our own path to success. How we act now will have a large impact on where we land after the COVID-19 pandemic has passed. And it is a test to our will and a testament of our ability to lead Eastern Kentucky University forward. In the face of challenge after challenge, when you next visit campus, you will see that we have a revitalized campus that is stunningly beautiful, up to date, and ready to provide everything that a college experience should be. Our retention rates and graduation rates are at all-time highs, and we're likely to break the all-time record when the numbers are authenticated in October. And when you use the state's performance-based funding model, even though the model doesn't necessarily flatter the regional comprehensive universities, we continue to perform well. We know that EKU is experiencing the longest interruption of on-campus instruction in its 100+ year history. Since the disruption to our regular operations in March, I've observed the university's executive cabinet rally behind the interim president. Our outstanding faculty moved to online instruction within a week's notice. That's outstanding and amazing. Our enrollment management team transitioned its student recruitment effort basically at the speed of business to use virtual platforms to engage and guide new students as they consider enrolling in the fall. The team quickly processed millions of dollars of housing and dining refunds to students without drawing on the university's reserves. We've also distributed millions of dollars of CARES funding directly to students as required under the CARES Act. We've also evaluated every bond issue that the university has outstanding and revisited every P3 contract to find efficiencies and opportunities to maintain a flat increase in the cost of attendance. That's a 0% tuition increase, a 0% increase in dining plans, and a 0% increase in housing rates, which we will hear more about later. And we continue to attract top talent like Dr. Danny Moore. Regents, I am encouraged and humbled by what our team has achieved since January. They are amazing people, and we are lucky to have them leading our institution. In May, I truly miss seeing our graduates walk across the stage, seeing the joy of graduation, seeing the joy of graduates. That validates all the time that we spend in fulfilling our fiduciary responsibilities to the university. Many of our graduates are on the front lines. Programs offered at EKU in areas like public safety, nursing, communications, teaching, supply chain management, business leadership, and so many others are vitally important to Kentucky communities. And we must continue to navigate forward to make sure that EKU graduates continue to power our communities. This has been our normal for over a century. And today, we may have adjusted our processes, but the result of our effort will be the same. EKU will continue its mission as an institution of higher learning and a school of opportunity for students from all walks of life. We'll accomplish all this through leadership, innovation, informed decision-making, all while focusing on what is best for the university as a whole and its students. Like many of you, or like all of you, I'm proud to play a part in maintaining a stable future for EKU. As a student, as now as a regent, I've discovered that colonels are resilient, they care deeply about their mission, they care about each other, and they have an unwavering expectation to win. It's a culture that we must preserve, and that will get us through this pandemic. and will continue to allow us to emerge as a beacon for anyone who wants to transform their lives in a positive way. I thank all the Regents for allowing me to serve you and this board in its capacity as chair, and I look forward to everything that we're going to do to make EKU the best university that it can possibly be and the best in the Commonwealth as we get through this pandemic together. With that, we'll move to the action items. And Madam Counselor, if you don't mind to call the roll for the minutes to confirm that we do have a quorum before we initiate action items.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Laura Babbage?
Here.
Juan Castro?
Here.
Nancy Collins?
Here.
Philip Gump?
Here.
Madison Lipscomb?
Here.
Alan Long?
Here.
Jason Marion?
Here.
Lynn Taylor Ty? Vasu Vasudevan?
Here.
And Chairman Diaz.
Here. As we move through the action items, I do want to caution the Regents that for purposes of voting, you must be visual. We must be able to see you, and your mute will have to be on. Where appropriate, I will ask council to do a roll call vote, and that'll be for tenure and for budget items. Okay, first on the agenda is approval of the minutes from the board meeting of February 28th, 2020. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion.
I've got a motion by Laura Babbage, a second by Juan Castro. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I believe that motion carries. Second on the agenda is a presentation by our auditor to discuss the audit plan for the coming year.
Pete, I assume that you're on with us at this point in time. I know you were earlier.
Yes, I'm here. I'm just going to go
Okay.
ahead and I'll go ahead and share my presentation screen if I can get it going. Okay. Let me see if this will work. Is that showing up okay? Great.
Yes.
Okay. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Pete Hugo. I'm an audit partner at Crow. I've seen many of you in prior years in person, so thank you for allowing me to join your Zoom meeting today. I lead Crow's national higher education practice, and I'm the audit partner on the Eastern Kentucky University Financial Statement Audit Engagement. So happy to be here with you today. I wanted to spend a few minutes just to go through some highlights of our planning process for the fiscal year 2020 financial statement audit. We've had a lot of conversations with your finance team over the last several months, as this has obviously been a very unusual time, and we've been monitoring from our higher education client base across the country some of the different things that are going on, and I'll include a few comments on that as we go. So just an overview of what we want to cover here is I'm going to go through the scope of our services for the engagement and the key contacts of the client service team working with EKU. Walk through some of the high-level summary of our audit approach and how we're approaching this audit process to make it as smooth as possible, given that some of it will need to be conducted remotely. And then a brief update for you on some new accounting pronouncements and a little brief summary of some issues that higher education institutions are facing due to the current pandemic. So as far as the scope of our services, this slide summarizes all of the information that we will provide from our engagement, which includes the audit opinion on management's financial statements. So your management will prepare the financial statements for fiscal year 2020. We will audit them, provide our opinion, and that includes auditing compliance with federal requirements for your major federal programs, and that's under uniform guidance and government auditing standards. So those additional audit requirements are there due to the fact that you spend a significant amount of federal grant dollars each fiscal year between student financial aid and various other federal programs that the university receives. So our audit report will contain the results of that as well. We'll issue a management recommendation letter on any internal control observations that we make and make communications to those charged with governance, which would be the audit committee. And that's an auditing standard that requires us to communicate certain things to the audit committee about the conduct of the audit, cooperation for management, changes in accounting policies, adjustments, things of that nature. We obtain a management representation letter from your management team, and we also have to provide our firm's representations to the Kentucky Auditor of Public Accounts as far as our independence, and that we will comply with the instructions that they provide on auditing the university since it rolls up into the state's reporting. So we will be providing that letter and our independence confirmation to the APA here shortly. We also provide reporting on lease law compliance, which is a Kentucky requirement. Subsequent events letter, we're required by the APA to update them on any subsequent events we are aware of from the university's management through a date, typically in November or December, that coincides with when the state will be issuing their audit report. And then we audit the radio station. There are some compliance requirements from the Corporation for Public Broadcasting that require an audit and perform NCAA agreed upon procedures, which are required annually due to the sports programs that you have. So a long list of some of the various requirements that we do report on. This is consistent with the prior year as well. The client service team is listed here. So we've listed myself as the partner, and then down to some of the staff levels as well, including our information technology team, our assurance professional practice review. That's our national office. It's a second partner review. So many of these names are very consistent with the prior year. We have had a rotation in the senior manager role. Kevin Kurzwick is the senior manager in our higher education practice, has been with Crow for about 12 years now and has worked with higher education the entire time, has experience from some other Kentucky universities throughout his career, and has already hit the ground running with the management team. We discussed this rotation with management and with Alan as the chair, and I think rotation of a role like that is a healthy thing periodically as well. So we look forward to having Kevin on the team, but Stephanie, Jerry, Shelby, those are all names that have been associated with this engagement in some way in the past. So we're always pleased to have returning faces who understand the university and its operations, particularly in a time where we may be doing a good portion of this work remotely. I won't read through everything on this slide, but just wanted to give you a little bit of perspective as to some of the audit planning approach. As we're going through what we're in right now, the planning stages of designing our audit procedures, evaluating risks. We of course review preliminary financial statements and have discussions with management. Some of the key points here under this discussions with management, I think it's important for this committee and the board to know that we have a very transparent communication plan with your management team. The finance employees reach out to us throughout the year to discuss transactions, unusual items, questions, new standards. So this isn't something where the audit's complete, we leave and come back next year. We really hear from them throughout the year, and that helps us plan the engagement and be efficient and address concerns as they come up. So much of the discussion of late has been certainly related to COVID-19 financial impact on operations and some of the impact also on how the audit process will work. A lot of that is centered around financial items as well as internal controls. As you've had some reductions in staffing in certain areas, we've had some conversations about what the impact has been on your internal control processes, and we'll continue to evaluate that because, thinking about some of the segregation of duties and review processes, they may be different in the last 3 months of the year versus the first 9 months of the fiscal year we're auditing. So we want to understand what changes occurred and how you're mitigating some of those risks. Because people are working remotely and you have less people does not remove the importance of internal controls to your financial operations. We've talked through some of your key audit risk areas as far as revenue recognition, any debt and compliance items, capital activity, and federal grant compliance. I think one important note to make here is you have a significant amount of federal grant funding each year that's part of this uniform guidance audit that I mentioned earlier. However, the COVID-19 impact will change that this year because the CARES Act included an allocation of funding for higher education institutions, and you received an allocation of that through the CARES Act. So those funds are for both emergency student aid grants and institutional support, and they will be part of your listing of federal expenditures and subject to audit. We're still awaiting the federal government to provide the compliance steps that we will need to audit under, and I'll touch more upon that as we get into the timing slide. So there will be some additional testing of federal grants this year due to the COVID funding that was from the CARES Act. And then our audit planning really focuses on our procedures and our timeline, working through all of that with management and making our requests for schedules and supporting information. Our preliminary or interim field work primarily focused on internal controls assessment, inquiries of management, reviewing board minutes, doing some high-level testing just to identify any risks, new concerns, and plan our procedures based on what we observe from that initial assessment that then leads to the final year-end field work, where we are completing any open items from the preliminary work, finishing up our testing of federal expenses, because we do begin that during the interim procedures, auditing year-end schedules, confirmations, drafting the audit report, all of the things you see listed here. That year-end fieldwork process, lasts at least a few weeks, and oftentimes beyond that as we complete our procedures. So that's the bulk of the audit work, is in the final field work. So this outlines our timeline. And, as I said at the beginning, we've labeled this our actions to promote a smooth audit process. We know that this needs to be flexible. We're very willing to be flexible to whatever management's needs are to get the audit done. We've done the preliminary work initially here in a remote setup back in May. We started with a planning meeting on May 18th, formal planning audit kickoff with management, and then conducted some preliminary field work remotely. The student financial aid testing is scheduled to be happening in the middle of July, and we'll be corresponding about how to best conduct that. For many of our higher education audits around the country, we've been able to efficiently do that remotely with some remote login access or other things we'll work out. So we're learning from what works from our other higher ed clients, and we will make this work in whatever format we need to, remote or in person. The final audit field work you see there is from mid-August through early September, and we plan to complete the audit by the end of September for your audit committee meeting, because the state's deadline is October 2nd. An important note there towards the bottom, this completion date is tentative and will depend upon timing of the federal compliance supplements issuance. What that means is, for some of the federal dollars, we have to wait for the government to issue the compliance supplement, which is the steps that tell the auditor what they need to test and perform. And there's a good chance we may not have that by October. The federal OMB has said they'll be issuing some updates to the compliance supplement later this year. And they said in the fall, and then an informal comment was made that don't forget fall lasts until mid-December. So I've alerted the APA and the state controller for all of our Kentucky engagements, just due to the fact that we need to have the compliance supplement before the audit can be fully finalized. They understand, and that will be the case for all universities across the country because everyone has that funding. So this may be an unusual year as far as the wrap up and timing, but we are planning to complete the majority of the procedures just as we have in the past, other than some of them may be remote. And we'll keep in touch with Barry, Brad, Alan, and the rest of the committee on any updates and things we learn as we go. The last couple points here, the radio station audit goal is to be conducting fieldwork in November with the report issued by the end of November, and the NCAA agreed upon procedures work in December with the due date that is January 15th of each year. We have our own online portal for requesting client schedules through a secure internet format. I'm very thankful we've had that up and running for years now because it was very helpful as we went through our remote fieldwork process, and we'll be transmitting data with EKU's management that way again this year. And we'll work with the finance team to coordinate as efficiently and as effectively as we can. So, Crow's commitment to the board and the audit committee is that we will make this a smooth process. We will keep your audit committee informed if there are any concerns or issues that come up. But we've had very good cooperation with management, and I expect that to continue. Briefly wanted to update you. We've talked in the past about some new accounting standards that were coming up and have had several over the last few years. There was one new standard that was scheduled to take effect this year, GASB Statement 84 on fiduciary activities, and another one next year, GASB 87 on leases, which was going to have quite a big impact on many organizations. Given the delays and issues and other focus areas that have become important because of the COVID-19 pandemic, GASB, the Government Audit Accounting Standards Board, approved a new statement that effectively postponed the effective date of all new standards. So they pushed all new standards that had not yet been implemented back one more year. So there will be no new accounting standards for your management team to adopt and implement this year. They'll now be effective, as you see, in fiscal years 21 and 22. These last few slides, I won't go over all the details of. I simply wanted to provide them for information to you, just to have some visibility of the issues and concerns we're hearing in the higher ed industry. So I'm very actively engaged with NACUBO, the National Association of College and University Business Officers. I frequently speak at their events. And between that and I was last year appointed to the AICPA's not-for-profit expert panel, been hearing a lot around the industry about the issues that not-for-profits and higher ed institutions are facing because of COVID-19. And we wanted to share that information with our clients. Our firm began hosting what we call higher education roundtable calls for all of our higher ed CFOs and controllers around the country back when the pandemic began, and have continued those. And that's where we're gathering a lot of this information. Those roundtables allow finance members from schools to share best practices, concerns, and questions with their peers from other institutions. And it's been very, very helpful and good conversation. So again, there's 2 or 3 slides here that I won't go through all the details, but wanted to provide them for you to see that you've heard at the beginning of this meeting, the great work that your management leadership teams have done addressing COVID-19 risks at EKU. I think it sounds great as I think about that in comparison to what I've heard from many others. You've done a very good job of addressing a lot of these things, both operationally and financially. But there are a lot of concerns and questions that were coming up about room and board refunds, tuition refunds or declines, debt covenants, federal compliance, all kinds of things, as you can see here, that there are many different angles that this risk takes resulting from the pandemic. So just given our firm's involvement in the higher ed industry, wanted to provide that information to you, and I'm happy to discuss any questions that you may have. The last one I'd mentioned on this slide is related to the CARES Act funding. A lot of question about what are the eligible expenses. The Department of Education is encouraging schools to spend these funds as quickly as possible to get them out to students and get the schools back on track, but they've not provided much in the form of written documentation about what is allowable or is not allowable. So there's been a lot of hesitation and discussion there, but we're still awaiting further information. So as we wrap up, I welcome any comments or questions from anyone on the committee or board as far as the audit planning process, COVID risks in higher ed, anything else I can be helpful with. And we certainly welcome your input on any audit concerns you may have. You're welcome to reach out to us anytime. Alan and I keep in contact if there are any issues that come up as well. And my email and phone number is here. And I, again, welcome to hear from you. So that completes the audit planning conversation. I welcome any questions or anything from management or the committee that you'd like to talk about.
Pete, thank you for the presentation. Are there any questions for our auditor? There being none, is there a motion for approval of the audit plan?
Make that motion, Chair.
I can second that.
All right, we've got a motion by Vice Chair Long, a second by Regent Tai. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you, Pete.
Thank you for having me today. I appreciate it.
And thank you for hanging around with us this long. If you decide to exit the Zoom call at this time, no offense would be taken, but you're obviously welcome to stay as long as you'd like.
All right. Well, thanks for including me. It's always interesting to hear, it all builds into the audit process. So thank you for including me in the earlier parts. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Pete. We appreciate it.
Next on the agenda are the personnel actions. President McFadden will report.
Mr. Chair, if the board members will reference page 81 in the board book, you will see the personnel actions as listed. Of note, you'll note that the total full-time salaries year over year is down $4.5 million for the institution. We are continuing to manage positions and salaries very judiciously on a day-to-day basis. I would ask the board to please approve the personnel actions as presented.
Is there a motion for approval?
Approve.
Motion.
I got a second by Juan. Who made the first?
I think I did. So moved.
Thank you, Nancy Collins. Regent Collins made the first. Regent Castro seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
I'm trying to call out who makes the first and second for the benefit of the minutes to help the note taker. That's why I ask. All right, we're moving to item D, approval of degree candidates for spring and summer of 2020. Dr. Bogachnik will report.
Thank you, Chair Diaz, members of the board. It is my great privilege to present to you the candidates for degrees for spring 2020 and summer 2020 terms. All these candidates have been reviewed by the departments and colleges and by the Office of the Registrar to ensure that they meet the academic standards established by the university. And I request your approval of these candidates.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Motion.
I believe I have a motion by Nancy Collins and a second by Regent Castro.
I think it was Regent Ty that made the motion.
It was actually Regent Babbage, but you can put down any of us. We're all in favor.
Indeed, the students have earned their degrees, and I'm pretty sure those are ready to be mailed. So I've got the motion by Regent Babbage and a second by Regent Castro. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Next. Yes. Oh, yes, ma'am.
Yes. Your packet also contains a relatively large number of changes in the academic programs that have been approved by the Council on Academic Affairs since the last meeting. Many of these are pretty routine changes to update curricula, including additions of certificates, additions or removal of various concentrations, or minor modifications to existing programs. There's a couple I do want to point out of special note. One is a new degree program that's a joint program between the College of Arts and Sciences and I'm sorry, Letters, Arts and Social Sciences. Boy, that's a blast from the past. And the College of Education on a joint certification program in education from English and history that Dean Sherry Powers and Dean Sarah Ziegler have worked with our state agencies exhaustively on this. And I think this is something that's new and will help our teachers be able to teach in multiple certification areas with their degrees. So that's pretty exciting. The other thing I want to point out is the suspension of the baccalaureate degree in apparel design and merchandising. This program has had relatively low enrollment in the past few years, and there's significant additional resources that would need to be made in order to maintain excellence in the program. So the department and college have brought forth a request to close the program so they can redirect resources elsewhere to other programs. This does not affect any other tenured faculty. I ask that these program actions be approved by the board, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Jerry, before I call for a motion, I know that the information in the packet contains a summary for each program move and what the expected fiscal impact is. For the record, I just want to ask a question. Is there any fiscal or increase in costs associated with any of the program changes?
For the most part, no. There will be some savings associated with the suspension of the baccalaureate degree in apparel design and manufacturing. Most of the other ones already use existing courses, and so there are no substantial financial impacts to any of these.
Thank you, sir.
I do want to just say thank you for the certificate programs. I think more than anything, as we continue to look at ways that we're trying to help our graduates find jobs, there's no better way than to give them a program that they can complete in a reasonable period of time and then go to work. So I really appreciate what you and the faculty have been doing. And I was very excited as I read these, as I received them online, about the certificates that you all are working towards. So thank you.
Well, I appreciate that. And I think the other thing that's great about those is that for many of our students who sometimes lack the confidence to go into a degree program, it is a starting block. It is a way to get into a program, develop some confidence. And we've been very mindful of using these certificates as building blocks toward degrees. And so we're hoping that success in these students will encourage students to come back into our degree programs as well. So thank you for that comment. Indeed.
Thank you, Regent Babbage. Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Approved.
Babbage.
Second.
I've got a second by Regent Collins, motion by Regent Babbage. All in favor?
Aye.
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 The motion carries. Jerry, I believe you're still.
Thank you. Moving on. Thank you, sir. Recommendations for promotion and tenure. Your packet includes the names and associated ranks for all faculty members approved for promotion and tenure this year. It also contains a brief summary of the notable contributions for each faculty member that was suggested by President McFadden, and I hope that you'll find that information helpful. We're very proud of the faculty, their achievements. That has been demonstrated over and over again this year. I ask that these promotions and granting of tenure be approved by the board.
Before I call for a motion, Jerry, I want to share that I do appreciate the summaries. In the past, we've gotten just a list of names. And while we do get to meet some faculty, and in fact, some faculty are teaching that I actually had as a student many years ago, but the new ones that are coming up for tenure, we don't really know much about them. And so it's just rewarding to see what they've been able to contribute to the academic environment and what they bring to Eastern Kentucky University. And it just makes it so much more enjoyable to vote when you know about the people that you're voting on. So thank you for that. Does anybody else want to share any thoughts before we call for a vote? All right. Well, there being no other comments, is there a motion to approve the promotion and tenure of faculty for 2019 and 2020?
So moved, Regent Ty.
Is there a second?
Second.
A second from Regent Marion. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. And I do want to note to you all that we have a little gift for each for each faculty that's been newly awarded tenure. There's a little gift for them at the president's office from us. So
thank you,
Jerry.
That's an amazing gesture. I'm sure it's going to be appreciated by all those who've worked so hard to attain tenure. So I appreciate your support.
All right. And no university funds were used in obtaining those gifts. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, we have an addendum to faculty sabbaticals that had been previously approved. We're asking to postpone 2 of these for Dr. John White and Dr. Danny Roush. Their sabbaticals were approved with funding from their Fulbright Awards and involved international travel. Since international travel is now restricted, Fulbright has asked us to pull back on those and to offer those at a later time. So these sabbaticals will be reinstated upon further guidance from the supporting agency. There's no financial impact to these actions, but I just want to bring them forward as an information item. And I'll leave it to your discretion to feel if you need to vote on these or leave it as a information item.
Madam Counselor, do you recommend that we vote on these changes or allow it? Is there authority for it to be handled administratively?
Historically, the board has approved sabbaticals. Given that there's not a fiscal impact, I think it would be appropriate for it to move forward with the board being advised appropriately, but certainly leave that up to you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Provost, consider us advised. Let's move to the next item.
Thank you, sir. And finally, from Academic Affairs, we have recommendations for faculty emeritus status. Your packet includes the names of faculty who have been recommended for emeritus status. These individuals have a distinguished record of service to EKU throughout their careers, and I ask for your approval of these recommendations.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion from Ty.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Vasudevan. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. Congratulations to those faculty.
Thank you, Chair Diaz. Thank you, members of the board. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Provost. Next on the agenda is John Williamson regarding the approval of model school laboratory policies.
Thank you, Chair Diaz. As I think most of you know, we were very, very fortunate this year to have House Bill 366, which established model as its own school district, its own educational programming separate from Madison County. So I want to thank President McFadden and Ethan Witt for their advocacy in that work. So with that came the need to change some of our policies that are specific to model. In addition, there were other legislative changes that changed the governance of K-12 schools across the Commonwealth. So the policies presented in front of you, there is a whole packet of them, incorporate the required legislative changes based on House Bill 366 and other legislation, as well as some recommended from the faculty and staff here at Model. So I'm happy to answer questions about any of those. I think you had them to read or review prior to the meeting.
Mr. Chair, one point of information for the board members. In the legislative change, the Board of Regents does serve functionally as what would be the school board for Model Lab School, which I think historically we probably operated kind of in that way, but it is very explicit at this point. And John and his team have done a phenomenal job putting this pack of policies together to keep us in compliance with the law, with the Kentucky Board of Education, and that the board can execute their duties accordingly.
Are there any questions for John Williamson or President McFadden about model school? Well, gentlemen, again, thank you for preserving model and stabilizing it and giving it a sure path moving forward. Is there a motion for approval of the model lab school policy updates?
So moved by Ty.
Thank you, Regent Ty. Second from Regent Castro. All in favor?
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you, John Williamson. Please continue to do an outstanding job with Model Laboratory School.
Thank you.
You're still up.
Yeah, I've got two other things on here, Chair Diaz. So the second issue is along with House Bill 366, establishing us as our own school district. There are some services that we still are going to need to work with Madison County on, including the repair and maintenance of our buses, the identification of students who qualify for free and reduced lunch, and a few other things. And so we have worked with the superintendent in Madison County, and Dana Foll has put together a contractual memorandum of understanding between the Board of Regents and the Madison County School Board. And so we're asking you to approve that memorandum so that we can execute it. That would allow for some shared services between the two entities now.
The memorandum is contained within page 426 of your agenda. I will note that the agreement continues to renew on an annual basis on July 1, so long as it's acceptable to the board and the university, which presumably means it's a one-year term on a rolling basis and can be terminable at any time during the year. Are there any questions about the memorandum to John Williamson or President McFadden?
I'm sorry, could you just explain one more time what the memorandum does?
Yes, the memorandum sets up establishes some services that Madison County will provide for us. For example, we don't have a transportation garage that can service our buses, for example. And so Madison County has agreed to service our fleet of buses at cost. And so we're just setting that up in the memorandum of agreement. It also, we agreed originally when we garnered their support for House Bill 366 that we would set a cap of the number of students that can come to model from Madison County. And we had that in the past, so we just continued a similar cap with a little increase. So there's a cap size for the number of students we take from Madison, not other districts, just Madison. So it's basically a few things like that they're going to do for us and we're going to do for them.
It sounds like you put some thought into this good working relationship to get us to this point, and the fact that they supported us. So I congratulate you on that. That's a major step.
Thank you. I think it's been a team effort with Dana and Ethan and their superintendent. It is very collaborative and continues to be.
Great.
And if
Thank you,
Chair, just so this board's advised, Superintendent Williamson and I are working on legal briefing, a fiduciary duty briefing for this board that we hope to bring forward in September, just to better educate you about your role with Model Lab and expectations that came out of some of the changes due to House Bill 366. So we will bring that forward in the fall, just so this board is more keenly aware of its oversight responsibilities.
Thank you, Counselor. Is there a motion for approval of the memorandum of understanding with the Madison County Board of Education?
So moved.
All right, I've got a motion from Regent Ty and a second from Regent Castro. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Thank you all.
And one more item there. In House Bill 366, there is the provision that allows the Board of Regents to designate Model as a LEA or local education agency for the purpose of applying for and receiving federal funds that K-12 school districts are eligible for. Without that, we would not be eligible for these federal dollars. So we're asking that you designate Model as a local education agency for the purpose of receiving federal funds.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved. Babbage.
Second.
I've got a motion by Laura Babbage, Regent Babbage, and a second by Regent Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you all.
Chair Diaz, if I could just say to you that on behalf of everyone at Model, we want to thank Regent Ty for continuing to serve on our advisory board for the laboratory school. It's been very helpful to have that connection between the Board of Regents and the lab school. So thank you for gifting her to us, and we are very appreciative of her input and insight that helps us continue our work here.
Thank you. It's been my pleasure to serve.
Thank you, Superintendent. And as I said previously, before I erroneously missed that you had two other items on the agenda, please continue to do a good work. Model Laboratory School is core to what Eastern Kentucky University is. We have been doing that almost as long as we have been an institution. And you know, we're lucky to have a superintendent of your quality running that institution, and frankly, serving as a laboratory school to advance public education in the Commonwealth. So thank you for being part of Team EKU.
My pleasure.
Okay, proposed tuition rates for 2020, 2021. Barry Pointer, the floor is yours, sir.
Well, Mr. Chair, let me hop in here. We just about got this agenda just right. The only problem was the next four items should have had me tag teaming with my favorite tag team partner, Barry Pointer. I do want to echo your comments about Superintendent Williamson, his work with the Model Lab School to build innovation and opportunity for not just the students who go there, but for EKU to help position us as a national leader has been second to none. And we are very thankful for his leadership there. The integration of the Model Lab School into our other K-12 programs, including the APSI, which was just last week, which had amazing attendance in the work that they're doing. Our dual credit programs, truly John is leading some innovative ideas for EKU to make us a leader in education. So we're very thankful for that. As we enter into the next four items, I want to give a little bit of narrative before Barry presents the actual numbers. We are proposing to the board a zero cost of attendance increase for Eastern Kentucky University this year. The reason we are doing that is multifaceted, but first and foremost, it is our students, Madison. We understand that access and affordability is critical to opportunity. And as we think about our student body, of which nearly 60% is first generation or low income students, we understand what our responsibilities are as an institution to make sure that that opportunity continues to be provided. There is no other school in Kentucky that is going 0% total cost of attendance this year. There are several institutions that are doing 0% on tuition. There are some that are trying to manage expenses for students in other ways. But to my knowledge, we are the only institution putting a stake in the ground and saying that we're going to be there to support our students and make sure that this year they pay no more for their educational experience, whether it be in the housing, dining, or in the instruction than what they did in the years past. And I hope this board understands that there was a lot of sacrifice to make that work as we built the budget for next year, but we also know that it was absolutely the right thing for us to do. And as we present this, it has taken a partnership with our dining partners, with our housing partners, and a shared sacrifice to ensure that this opportunity is there for our students. And we know it's going to benefit those students who will be here this fall. And I hope that it sends a very strong message to future students that we at EKU care about you. We care about you being able to have an accessible and affordable education, and that being a graduate of this institution is something that will set you up for much success in life. And hopefully it will not be something you look back on and regret making that investment in. And so with that, Mr. Chair, I'll let Mr. Pointer present the documents as presented.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I'll share the screen here real quick. First item that I wanted to present, and thank you, President McFadden and Chairman Diaz for the opportunity to present these 4 items. The tuition, as noted, for the upcoming fiscal year, we've set it at 0%. CPE used a case-by-case basis for every school, and we are going with a 0%. And as you can see, here's the schedule for the university, undergraduate, graduate, and also for a model laboratory school. All those rates are set at 0%. So with that, I would ask for your approval of this proposed 0% increase in tuition.
So moved.
So moved.
It took me a while to get off of mute. Y'all were anxious to vote on 0% there.
Yeah.
So we got a motion. We got a motion from Regent Collins and a second from Regent Ty. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, I might interject slightly. There is a leveling of tuition at Model Lab. So that is not a 0, but there is a leveling between the primary and secondary groups within that group. But that is correct in the packet. So
Let me recategorize the question. I have a motion, or the statement. I have a motion from Regent Ty and a second from Regent Collins to approve the tuition and fees recommended by Vice President Barry Pointer. Is that so?
Yes.
Yes.
That being the case, Madam Counselor, will you call the row?
Two was slow getting to mute. Okay, Laura Babbage.
I agree, yes.
Juan Castro.
Yes.
Nancy Collins.
Yes.
Philip Gump.
Affirmative, yes.
Madison Lipscomb.
Yes.
Alan Long.
Yes.
Jason Marion.
Yes.
Lynn Ty.
Yes.
Vasu Vasudevan.
Yes.
And Mr. Chair.
Yes, aye. That motion carries. Thank everyone. Next on the agenda is the proposed meal plan rates for 2019, 2020, 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As previously mentioned, these rates are also set at 0% year over year. Successfully negotiated with our partner to get 0% increase, and we've also added a few new plans to add some variety for others who may have a voluntary plan. So with that, I would ask that you approve the proposed 0% increase in meal plans.
So moved.
I've got a motion from Regent Ty. Is there a second?
Second, Babbage.
Thank you, Regent Babbage. Madam Counselor, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Laura Babbage.
Aye.
Juan Castro.
Yes.
Nancy Collins.
Aye.
Philip Gump.
Yes.
Madison Lipscomb.
Aye.
Alan Long.
Aye.
Jason Marion.
Aye.
Lynn Ty.
Aye.
Vasu Vasudevan.
Aye.
Chairman Diaz.
Aye. Thank you again. Next on the agenda is proposed residence hall rates for 2020 and 2021.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, as previously noted, we've worked with our partners and with University Housing to establish 0% increases across the board in all residential areas of campus. As presented in the schedule in your budget or your agenda books. And I would propose and request that the board approve these rates as presented.
Is there a motion for approval?
Yes.
So moved.
Was that Regent Lipscomb?
Yes, that's what I picked up.
Is there a second?
Babbage,
Yes.
second.
One.
All right, we got Regent Babbage as a second. Madam Counselor, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Laura Babbage,
Aye.
Juan Castro,
Aye.
Nancy Collins,
Aye.
Philip Gump,
Aye.
Madison Lipscomb,
Aye.
Alan Long,
Aye.
Jason Marion,
Aye.
Lynn Taylor Ty,
Aye.
Vasu Vasudevan, and Chairman Diaz.
Aye. That
Let me
motion
just
carries
add
as well.
that- I'm sorry. Let me just add, it's very impressive the way that you all have worked with our vendors to get them to also work with us and with our students. That is a very impressive process that you have gone through. It's a Harvard case review kind of study during COVID-19. I certainly hope something gets published about all this. It's just fabulous.
Well, Regent Babbage, I will assure you that our partners understand how important it is to our board to make sure that an education at EKU is affordable and it is accessible. And so I think that we have relied heavily on the comments by this board in previous meetings, talking about the importance of our students. And Madison, we wanted to make sure that you could leave here as student body president in your last board meeting to vote on a 0% increase in all three areas of cost for our students. To say that maybe you're the only student body president to have the opportunity to take such a vote. So
Yes, on behalf of the students that are now to come after me, thank you. Thank you for making it so that this is something that is affordable, and this situation cannot prohibit someone from continuing their education and from growing themselves academically and being able to participate and being a colonel. So thank you guys.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I would like to just echo the comments of Regent Babbage and congratulate Dr. McFadden, Barry, everyone on achieving these results. We need to publicize this, guys. I mean, this is unprecedented. We really need to do something special to get the word out there to everyone that it's a 0 cost increase.
Thank you, Regent Collins. Regent Marion, were you going to say something?
I wasn't going to yet, but it was thinking for me. We're going to be talking about the budget here soon. And another, I think, kind of remarkable aspect of all of this when I'm looking at the higher education landscape is the ability to make these cuts without having a really significant impact on our people. So this is both supportive of our students as well as our faculty and staff. I mean, my heart's out to those that had, we experienced a little furlough period there in previous conversations that existed with the Senate leadership or the campus community. We have reason to believe that a lot of those folks will be able to be back. But the fact that the amount of cost savings that have had to be done to make all of this possible, it really says a lot about how this administration values the people at the institution, and overall, the impacts on our faculty have been minimal. We'd love to have raises and all that, but we understand the climate that we're in, and when we're looking at other institutions right here in our immediate vicinity, the ability to not just hold the tuition and fees flat at 0%, but also to take care of our people is truly admirable. And I think I can speak on behalf of the majority of our faculty that we really appreciate that.
Thank you, Regent Marion.
Chair
Anyone
Diaz,
else? Yes,
Regent Marion has stolen my thunder for the next topic. But before we leave this, I want to let Regent Collins understand that the pillars on which the EKU Advantage, which is a brand new campaign that we are launching today, that involves many of the things that Dr. Wasson talked about earlier as it relates to non-certified transcripts, non-testing admission, 0% tuition, 0% housing increase, 0% dining increase. This is the EKU advantage. We are going to be focused, very much laser focused on our students' access and affordability to education. We're going to meet them everywhere they are to make sure that they can have the opportunity that's put in front of them. And so today, with the passing of these tuition, dining, and housing rates, we will be launching the EKU Advantage, which will be the pillars really on which we're going to build the campaign to not only finish recruiting an outstanding class for 2020, but to start the recruitment for the class of 2021, knowing that we will stand with them to make sure that they can achieve their hopes and dreams.
Wonderful news. Wonderful news. Thank you. And if there is anything I can do to help, just let me know.
Very good.
Thank you all for the comments and the kind words. This is certainly unprecedented. And I'll just briefly say, this is what the American dream is made of. It is a real thing. I have benefited from it. I suspect that others of you have as well. And in the past 20 years, the cost of achieving the American dream has stretched our students beyond capacity. And it's a right, necessary, and appropriate for us to do things to make sure that we protect the dream and that we keep it attainable for the students who are looking for opportunity. With that, Barry, you've got the operating budget for the year?
That's correct. I think David wanted to say a few words here quickly.
So, Mr. Chair and board members, as we prepare to present to you at a very global level the budget for next year, I want each of you to understand that it has been constructed in a very thoughtful and purposeful way. It has been constructed with a value system that is focused on our students, their success, not only while they're here, but when they leave here to go out into the world. In doing so, we know we cannot do that without the people, without our dedicated faculty, without our very capable and dedicated staff, and without all those who reach out and make a difference in the lives of each one of those students. This budget that we put together is a very responsible one. It is one that reflects us moving those certain resources from certain places to support others. This budget will be approximately $17 million less than the budget last year as it relates to our overall operating. That is reflective of reductions in performance funding. It is reflective of the tuition revenue projections that Dr. Wasson spoke of earlier. It is reflective of certain other revenue streams that we feel like are at risk, including the 1% reduction we took in our general fund appropriation just recently in the executive order that was issued. This budget put forward is one that prioritizes people, and it is one that has no substantial broad impact on personnel across campus. It does not include across the board pay reductions. It does not include across the board furloughs. It does not include any type of strategic reduction in force. And we feel like that to bring this budget forward to this board at this time is a responsible action and is one that we can all be very proud of. Now, I will say this as a guiding principle. We have gone as far as we can to balance this budget, giving all of the information that we have today. If there are additional budget actions that would impact our institution going into future months, if we were to see a melt in enrollment or tuition revenue going into the fall, we would need to take decisive management actions in order to make sure that we balance the budget for this next year, and that we would ensure that we would come to you again at each meeting trending toward a balanced and appropriately managed budget by our administration team. And so I want to commend Regent Marion, Regent Gump, as being great partners in working with our faculty and staff to bring forward a very responsible budget that prioritizes our people, and that is our students, our faculty, and our staff. And I commend Barry Pointer and his team for really working with every VP unit to bring forward a budget that has purpose and intention. Now, I will say this, that with every budgets are expressions of values. So when I talk about people, what are the things we're going to be focused on in this budget? Diversity, equity, and inclusion will be paramount this year as we think about as an organization and as we expend resources. Aviation, enrollment growth, strategically aligning our programmatic offerings and making sure that we are supporting the areas that we can grow. Being focused on closing this comprehensive campaign and finishing strong in raising those private dollars so that we can move on to the next set of opportunities to close that campaign. And to make sure that we are recognizing excellence where it's at. And that is included in 2 initiatives that I am very hopeful that we will be able to announce very shortly, those who are being recognized. And that is an innovation fellowship that the board would be supporting. That would be supporting individuals who are bringing innovation excellence to the university and notoriety. That would be fellows for the Board of Regents, and a fellowship out of my office that will be supporting diversity, equity, inclusion for those individuals who are out there doing exceptional work in diversity, equity, inclusion on our campus. And so when we think about this year, yes, resources are scarce, but we are very focused on outcomes. And we know that this is going to be a very successful year for Eastern Kentucky University. And we are presenting a budget that is reflective of our commitment to make sure that we see that type of success.
Thank you, President McFadden, and thank you, Chairman Diaz, for the opportunity to present the budget to the board for approval. The budget is balanced. I call your attention to the budget as presented in your agenda packets, and just to scan, as President McFadden noted, the significant reduction that you'll see here in the education in general area. The overall budget is significantly reduced. We have these 3 buckets that we always talk about. This is the bucket where we live. This is the fund that we live in, and it is significantly reduced this year. And I do urge you to take a look at the budget. It's presented in its entirety, but I wanted to show you this high-level overview here in Table A. And as David also noted, there's also a description back here where you can see the natural classifications, and you can see when we talk about people, it really is about people. If I can get to it quickly. The natural classifications of the budget, you can clearly see that salaries and benefits are the largest amounts of money in our ENG fund overall. So with that, I present the budget to you for your approval.
Thank you, Mr. Pointer. The budget book is included in your agenda and materials. Are there any questions about the budget? There being none, is there a motion for approval?
So moved. Second.
I've got Regent Castro with a motion and a second from Regent Collins.
Mhm.
Madam Counselor, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Laura Babbage,
Yes, aye.
Juan Castro,
Aye.
Nancy Collins,
Aye.
Philip Gump,
Aye.
Madison Lipscomb,
Aye.
Alan Long,
Aye.
Jason Marion,
Aye.
Lynn Ty,
Aye.
Vasu Vasudevan,
Aye.
Chairman Diaz.
Aye. Barry, you thanked us for allowing you the opportunity to present the budget, but in reality, it's us that should thank you for preparing the budget. It is our statutory obligation to approve a budget annually. And as you know, the Kentucky Revised Statute provides a penalty if we don't do that. So thank you for bringing forth the budget. We gave you as much time as you can possibly have this year to act on the most relevant information as you possibly can. But today was in fact the deadline to approve a budget for the next fiscal year. So thank you for doing the work. Thank you for getting the P3 partners aligned and for presenting a sensible budget that puts people first.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I want to give a special call out to Emily Waters, who does the biggest lift for this budget ever. So thanks.
Okay, next on the agenda is the interim employment agreement for the President McFadden. If you look to page 498, there is a very short interim employment agreement for services of interim president. As you all know, Dr. McFadden commenced acting as our interim president, I believe on January 6th, and has since then been working as, I suppose, an at-will employee. While the agreement is flexible, it's a one-year term, really as we proceed going forward, the university doesn't have protection with respect to Dr. McFadden's ability to leave the institution should he get a more attractive offer from somewhere else. So it is our duty to try and keep him with us at least for the duration of the next year until we chart a course for a permanent plan with the position of president. With that, has everyone had a chance to review and comment on the agreement?
Yes.
Yes.
Is there a motion? Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Move.
Second.
Okay, so I saw Regent Nancy Collins make the motion. I saw the second by Regent Long. Is that correct?
Yes.
Works for me.
Madam Counselor, will you call the roll?
Yes, sir. Laura Babbage,
Aye.
Juan Castro,
Aye.
Nancy Collins,
Aye.
Philip Gump,
Aye.
Madison Lipscomb,
Aye.
Alan Long,
Aye.
Jason Marion,
Aye.
Lynn Taylor Ty,
Aye.
Vasu Vasudevan,
Aye.
Chairman Diaz.
Aye. Thank you all. That motion carries. Next on the agenda on page 503, there is a resolution regarding Richard L. McQuady. Richard is an alumni of Eastern Kentucky University. This resolution pertains to the Eastern Scholar House. It is not a property that we technically own. The owner of the facility is a partnership that is controlled by the Kentucky River Foothills. They have proposed renaming nomenclature for the Scholar House to include honoring of Richard L. McQuady. In their due diligence, the Kentucky River Foothills has asked the lenders, the equity providers, and different participants in the deal for their consent in including Richard L. McQuady in the name of the Scholar House, and they have now asked for our consent. So before you is a resolution consenting to that. For a quick summary of the resolution, it identifies Richard as or Mr. McQuady as an alumni of the institution. He was instrumental in having the Scholar House program created in Kentucky and in directing state resources to fund that building on our campus. And since his retirement, he has continued to support the Scholar House in a number of ways. So with that, I'm looking for a motion to consent to the Kentucky River Foothills organization renaming of that building.
So be it.
Thank you, Regent Castro. Is there a second?
Second, Babbage.
Thank you, Regent Babbage. All in favor?
Aye.
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 That motion carries. The next on the agenda is an approval of a resolution regarding bond refunding. Over the past, I would say 30 days, there's been discussion and legislation introduced regarding tax changes and COVID relief that might change our ability, Eastern's ability, to refinance existing indebtedness, bond issues from the past. We may be able to enter the marketplace and frankly alleviate our operating, alleviate money for operating costs by saving debt service payment from lower interest rates. If in the most recent proposal had a window to do this, and I don't know how quickly things can move in DC. Sometimes they don't move at all. Sometimes they can move quickly. And what I don't want to do is lose an opportunity for us to generate savings through our bond issues. So there's a resolution in the packet that authorizes the administrative team to pursue a refunding if it becomes available to us from now until the time that we meet again in September.
So moved.
Second, Collins.
Thank you, Regent Marion. Thank you, Regent Collins. All in favor?
Aye.
That motion carries. Thank you all. Next on the agenda is executive session. I don't believe that's necessary. I think we put that in as a precaution. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to share with the board or any parting comments before we adjourn for the day?
I would like to make a parting comment if I could. I see where Doug Cornett has been with us the whole time. And I just wanted to tell him how meaningful the commercials that his group came up with, especially the thank you commercials that we were seeing for the university, and pointing out our people on the front line. And I thought that was impressive, and it was very appreciated.
Thank you, Regent Ty. I appreciate that. Look for something coming from the EKU Advantage very soon.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe near you.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I want this board to understand how humbling it is to be able to serve this institution at this time. Many people have said, boy, what a time to get the chance to lead your alma mater. It must be just, I feel so sorry for you. And I will tell you this, I tell them there's no place I would rather be at no better time with no better people. These are truly the moments that will define the next opportunity for us to serve generations to come. It is truly a privilege to be here, and I would rather be nowhere else than right here at EKU doing this work every day. And as I look on this screen and see a dedicated group of teammates who put in 110% every day, and they're supporting and pushing their teams to do the same, it is truly a privilege to be here, and I appreciate the board's confidence in me.
Thank you,
Chair
Mr.
Diaz,
President.
I have, oh, go ahead.
No, yes, sir. Go ahead.
I just have one little comment. It just shows about the team that we have at Eastern, and I've got a quote from Franklin D. Roosevelt that I think pertains to the times that we're in right now, and it shows what the team that we've had, where we've had all the budget cuts in the past and everything. It just prepared us for this. And it says, a smooth sea never made a skilled sailor. And that was from President Roosevelt many, many years ago. And I think that it just applies at this point in time so well. And our group is gaining more skills as they go along. But it shows also that we had skills in the past from this team, or they would not have been able to negotiate where we are at this point in time.
Regent Long, does that explain your background screen?
It totally explains my background screen.
I was about to ask the same thing, but Chairman jumped in. That's good.
Go ahead, Vasu. Oh,
No,
nice.
I was about to make a comment on his background screen as well, but you kind of got in there. But thank you, Regent Long and Chairman.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
If I could, I would also just like to everybody give, Madison, Regent Lipscomb a round of applause. She has been a student leader. I've had the opportunity to serve with her in other roles on this campus. And she has been a student leader for the student government when they were going through some transitioning and having their space reconstructed. And now that they have an opportunity to use it, she's still not able to move in, it's like Moses. So she can't make it to where she could be, but she's still with us as this group, as this board. She has stayed with us. She's a proud alumna of the institution. And she did it in a way that a lot of student leaders sometimes cannot do. And it's truly defining for Eastern. She did all of this while being a great student, a student leader in the region, slinging conies, making money, working as a student. And, we are so lucky to have somebody like her. She's kept the student government working together online, largely because she had built that relationship with so many of those students even before we got to this point. And we as a board are really going to be missing out without having her with us, because her perspective is so in touch with the types of students that come to Eastern and, that come from different places and all come together. And I just, from the bottom of my heart, we're going to miss you, Madison. And you always have a home with Eastern, and you're once a board member, you're always a board member. So.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, thank you so much. I was going to take a second to thank you guys all as well for giving me the opportunity to serve alongside of you guys, constantly making it so that I felt comfortable speaking for our students, making sure that those who do not have a voice, I'm able to lift their voice to this table, bring it up, make it sure that they, those students that do have those barriers, those students that aren't able to be where I am right now, able to bring their concerns up to you guys, and you guys are always willing to hear them out and make it so that we are able to build our policies and our culture on campus to fit all of their needs. So thank you guys so much for giving me this opportunity to be here, making it so that not just myself, but student body presidents to come have a voice and are able to speak up. But thank you for the experiences that I've got, for all I've gotten to take from this, and the experiences and the wisdom that I've been able to bring in from all of you guys at this table. So thank you.
Madison, we are all knocking.
Thank you.
That's right. That's right.
We'll miss you, Madison.
Indeed.
I will miss you guys all dearly. I will be around whenever I can, but I will be now permanently located, for at least for the short term, in Cincinnati. So reach out to me if you guys ever need anything. Everybody listening, if you ever need someone to bounce things off of for getting the student perspective. As of right now, I will still be serving as student body president up until the elections in September. So I'm doing all that I can to remotely hear them out, because every time EKU president's office pops up in their email inbox, panic ensues as to what's going to happen in the fall. So patrolling social media is all I can to respond to students in their panic modes. So,
Hey, Madison, you might consider sending them an email about the 0% increase in cost.
I did just post on my Twitter. I do plan on posting an infographic kind of outlining what happened at the meeting today, just to be sure of transparency and communication. So thank you all.
Well, listen, congratulations on your employment with Fidelity. I know that you were contemplating going the higher education route, but you chose to go into the private sector, which is great. You make wonderful decisions, except living across a river, maybe not one of them. But listen, thank you. It's students are what makes our service worth it, and getting to know you, and certainly I hope that as you have been on the board, you have felt like a peer. You have the same vote that every one of us does, and when you're in the room with us, you're an equal, and you have been dutiful in representing the voice of students, and it's been wonderful to get to know you. And I look forward to knowing you as a co-alumni going forward. Congratulations. All right. Unless there's any other business or discussions, well, there's no other businesses. There's no other discussion matters. I look for a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Long. Is there a second? Thank you, Regent Vasu. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All, thank you very much for making my first Zoom board meeting, I think, a successful one. And for hopefully we didn't do anything inappropriate under open meetings laws. I think we did well, but thank you all. And I look forward to seeing you in person as soon as it's safe to do so. And hopefully our meeting in September can be partially in person and partially online. We'll see how that transpires. But thank you all for your support today of the agenda and of the administration. With that, we are adjourned.
Thank you, Chairman.